Chapter 251. Lith looked at her, but he couldn't see anything wrong. She was 1.54 meters, 5 feet 1 inch, high with long gold hair tied back in a braid. She was quite cute, especially since her diminutive stature emphasized her bosom. Lith was wondering why he had no recollection of her when Brina took off the long glove covering her right hand. Her arm had a long burn scar up to the elbow, while the hand was unnaturally thin. It had only the thumb and the index finger. The scar tissue was bright red and swollen. Its jagged surface made it look like a sponge had grown under her skin. She had an accident with the oven when she was little. They had to amputate most of her fingers, and even if Nana managed to save the hand, the scar causes her a lot of pain whenever it gets cold. We prepare an ointment for her, but it's not enough. This year, she will take part in the spring festival. I won't, Brina angrily whispered, cutting her short. I'm dumb and goats. I'm tired of people staring at me with pity, just like the your brother part died in her mouth. Lith was merely looking at the arm like it was a broken chair, assessing the damages with invigoration. Brina hadn't noticed his touch because the arm lacked any sensitivity. I can fix it. For a price, of course. The cold issue? Tista asked, full of hope. No, I mean the scar, the fingers. Everything. Seeing their disbelief, Lith placed his index finger on Brina's elbow, casting a short spell that restored an inch of skin. Nana can't perform Tier 4 light spells, but I can. His voice was cold and professional. The procedure is expensive. If you're interested, talk to whoever manages the finances in your family, and then let me know. I'll be available until spring. Tista opened her mouth to say something, but remained silent. Everything had happened so fast that Brina wasn't able to move or speak. She stared for a while at the pale new skin, before leaving in a hurry after noticing the kids staring at her, pointing their fingers at her still exposed arm. An hour later, Nana finally returned, and the queue was reduced to 4 people. Excellent work, kids, Nana said after checking the income. I can handle the rest. You go home and have a nice meal. Lith could have opened a warp steps, but judging by how Tista was looking at him, she clearly had something to say. So, he kept the surprise for another time, and they walked home instead. How can you think about money when you can help someone in need? She finally said once they got out of the village. Do you have any idea what she went through all her life? She gets out of the house only during fall and winter. She never had a boyfriend. She had it much easier than you. Litha's voice was indifferent. She has been well fed and dressed all of her life. Her parents have a nice house and can afford the treatment. End of the story. Tista was stunned. Yes, but I got cured and she didn't. A healer's job, she replied after a few seconds, only to get cut short once again. It's a job like any other. Light magic, it's not some kind of holy power. It's just a mean to an end. Does the baker give bread and pastries away for free to those in need? No. Did anyone ever help us when we were starving? No. When you were ill, did her father care for your condition? No. Then give me one good reason why I should work for free. Tista remained silent for a few minutes until they arrived halfway towards home. So what are your limits now? She asked. Brother-sister confidentiality? Tista nodded. As long there's a breath of life, I can save anyone. I can now regrow organs, limbs, anything. My only limitation is that I can't repair something that was missing from the start. I can give back the sight to someone that has lost an eye, but not to someone born blind. Tista seemed incredibly happy at his words, making Lith worried. Are you unwell, or there's someone else you want me to heal? He sighed. No, everything is fine. She giggled. It's just that Lucia is a small village in the middle of nowhere. After hearing your stories and seeing you at work today, I'm wondering if I should try to get into an academy too. Lith shuddered at the thought. I have always avoided mentioning the nastiest details of the academy. I can't see Tista not getting scarred for life by all those jerks. Not to mention that if she manages to graduate too, our family would be recognized as a new magical bloodline. It would cause us a lot of troubles. If she really wants to step up her skills, then I can't shield her from the truth anymore. The princess has to become a warrior, or the world will eat her alive. Before going back home, Lith went to Celia's house. According to Solus, She was supposed to have left together with Ryman, but he wanted to make sure the huntress didn't need help. The door and the windows were locked. Lith used life vision, discovering that there was no one inside. One less person to worry about. He shrugged. Nana was at the end of her rope and the huntress was gone, probably for good. Lith felt a sting in his heart, but he preferred to focus on those he had left. His parents were really happy to have him home earlier, and during lunch, they wanted to know everything about his last days of the academy. Lith didn't tell them about the vision, but for Tista's sake, he shared with them all the aggressions and sabotage attempts he endured. So much violence, just for a grade? Rez couldn't believe his ears. Lith explained to them how fierce was the everyday life at the White Griffin. Nobles take success for granted and don't like being overshadowed by commoners. They consider it as a personal insult. Commoners mostly work their asses off, but since the academy it's the only way out of poverty, they are ruthless too. It's easier to meet a dragon than to find an honest friend. After many questions about the academy and as many reproaches for the things he had omitted in the past, Lith finally could tell them about the rankings. Alina and Tista cried with joy at his achievements, while Raz simply hugged him. "I'm so proud of you, son. I don't know what I did to deserve such a good kid." Lith was happy too. Their joy was the first piece of good news in months. "We should share the good news with Rena." Alina stood up, walking toward the door. "You stay here. I'll go get her," Lith said while opening a warp steps. Alina was about to argue when the dimensional rift opened in their dining room right outside of Rena's house in the village. The mouths of the members of Lith's family fell to the ground for the surprise. When less than a minute later the gate reopened, they were still awestruck, and so was Rena. Lith had a princess carry her through the warp steps. They could hear many scared murmurs coming from the village. "Ah, suck it, you bastards." The voice of Zekel, Rena's father-in-law, roared. "I'm the only one with a god in the family." What a classy, humble man. Lith sneered as soon as the gate closed behind him. After much stuttering and many questions about warp steps, Lith finally brought Rena up to speed. She was overjoyed by so many good news, and so was the rest of the family. Again, Lith couldn't understand why they were so excited about something they already knew. "It's incredible. Mom, this means you can visit me whenever you want, even during winter." Rena's words left Lith speechless. "Indeed. Now we can go to the village regardless of the weather." Oh gods, freshly baked bread during winter is a dream come true. Suddenly the conversation degenerated into how to better exploit Lith's new ability. More than once he wanted to point out that he wasn't a cab, but there was no such word on Moger. After everyone had decided what they wanted to use Lith's powers for during the winter, Rena was bombarding him with questions about the places he had access to, how many people he could move at once. When they returned, she wasn't done yet. "Big sis, come here, please." Tista pulled Rena aside, pushing the index finger against her own lips. "Lith, dear, please have a seat." Alina had a serious expression, making him inwardly fear to be about to get scolded again. "I told them so little, and I'm already getting my ass kicked. I was right working on a need-to-know basis with them." He thought, "Would you like to have another sibling?" Her words made Lith's brain freeze. His hands clenched the armrest so hard that only the fear to reveal his strength too made him snap out of it when the wood started cracking ominously. "Is this a trick question?" He thought. "After Orpal and Tryon, I don't feel safe rolling the dice again. Sadly, it's not something up for me to decide. Damn if I hate rhetorical questions." "Sure, Mom," he actually replied, while hoping that his face matched his happy tone. "Are you pregnant already, or is it something you're planning ahead?" His words made the mood in the room turn heavy. Everyone was looking at the floor with a sad expression. Alina was squeezing her own hands, taking deep breaths to calm down. "Have you ever wondered why we didn't have any more children?" Raz said, while hugging his wife from behind to comfort her. "Yes. I thought that since we had so many problems with food and money already, you used some spell to prevent further." Lith was about to say issues, but managed to stop in time. They were speaking about having another baby, so they didn't share his lack of love for small, smelly, noisy humans. "Another pregnancy." "Well, yes and no," Alina explained. "Sure, after you were born, We couldn't afford to have more children, even though we love each other so much. She caressed Raz's hands, kissing his forearm. That's why we were actually happy when the Great Mother took the choice out of our hands. The Great Mother? Aren't you using a darkness magic spell? During all his life on Mogar, Lith had yet to find a single church or temple. Religions were almost non-existent. Gods were relegated in the roles of swear words or synonyms for destiny. We know the spell, but it requires a magico level of power to be viable. Otherwise, repeated uses can cause permanent sterility. Raz's words were like a punch in Lith's stomach. Do you mean that? Yes. Alina nodded. The labor was long and complicated. I don't know exactly what happened. Nana tried to explain it to me, but I couldn't and didn't want to understand. The only thing that mattered to me was that something inside of my body broke that night, making me unable to bear children anymore. Everything made sense. Lith had wondered from time to time why even after Orpal had been disowned, after Tista had been healed, and the financial situation of the household had improved so much thanks to his jobs, his parents had stopped having children. His mother was still young, yet nothing had happened. He had always shrugged it off, thinking they wanted to sit back and enjoy their new wealth. Yet now he couldn't help but feel guilty. Guilty for having always ignored their distress simply because it suited him, but mostly because he was the real root of that situation. They were his parents, but Lith wasn't really their son. Calm down, you idiot. No need for guilt trips. I didn't choose Alina. I didn't kill the real Lith. He was already dead, so nothing that happened that night was my fault. Lith was aware of how his birth was considered a miracle by his family. I pray the Great Mother every day to thank her for her gift. Alina took the word out of his mind. When Nana told me about my condition, I felt desperate, but as soon as I held you in my arms, it didn't matter anymore. I was already too scared after almost losing you. At that moment, you gave me a reason to live. Alina looked at him with deep affection. Those words soothed Lith's uneasiness, but his stomach was still tied in a knot. Tista says that you can cure everything. Is it true? Her eyes were full of expectancy. Yes. Do you think you can help me? Absolutely. Lith lied with confidence. The reproductive apparatus was one of his weakest spots since he never experimented with pregnant women. There is nothing in the textbooks to help him understand the difference between a functioning yet defective organ and a mint one. He remembered how during the treatments he had found lots of impurities in Alina's womb, but even removing them and bringing her to full health for years didn't seem to have worked out. Chapter 252. I never noticed any anomaly. The damage must be something subtle. Probably it just makes the changes of pregnancy really low. I would have never missed something that affected her health. He thought. Lith stood up, placing his hand on Alina's belly before activating invigoration. He scanned her ovaries and uterus for a long time, but came up with nothing. Odd. Everything seems fine. Noticing his mother's distressed expression, he tried to reassure her. Don't worry. Maybe it's just because I don't know what to look for. I just need reference material. Lith touched Rena's womb, looking for clues. Good God! Lith snapped back with a shocked expression. Is there something wrong? Rena was on the verge of panic. She had never seen her brother freaking out, not even after having an arm cut off. Yes, I mean no. I'm not ready to be an uncle. I'm too young. The room exploded with cheers, tears, and joy. Lith remained dumbstruck. He really was not ready. Guess they didn't know either. For a moment, I thought that Rena's pregnancy was the reason behind Mom's request. Like knowing she is about to become a grandma made her aware of the passing of time. He thought, thank the gods. Rena squeezed him between her arms before putting his hand back on her belly. After being married for almost a year, I was starting to be afraid Senin or I was sterile. I was going to ask for your help right after Mom. How was the baby? This big. Litha's index finger formed a circle about as big as a pea. I want to know if it's healthy. Rena slapped him on the nape. I guess. He shrugged. The fetus was too little. There wasn't much he could see. Lith had no experience in the matter and didn't want to give them false hope. Me and my big mouth. The chances of miscarriage during the first pregnancy are high, or at least they are on Earth. I can only keep my finger crossed and keep an eye on her. Please, no more surprises. He said using Tista as a template this time. At those words, she became beet red, but said nothing. I need a clean slate. He explained. I have no idea if Rena's body has changed to better host a baby. Using her as blueprint could cause a false pregnancy. A few minutes later, he believed to have found the root of the problem. The difficult labor had caused the formation of adhesions in the tubes. Lith had no idea what they were, though. He only recognized them as an anomaly. I got good news, and I got bad news. Which do you want to hear first? He asked. The bad news. Alina hugged Raz, who tried to act strong. It's worse than I thought. Between the damage that you suffered and the passing of time, I can't promise a full recovery. What about the good news? Raz asked. I think I can do it, but I need some time to prepare and to ask for guidance. Raz tried to lift Lith out of joy, only to realize a second too late that his son was already taller than himself. They spent the lunch merrily, talking about their plans for the winter. Rena couldn't wait to share the good news with her husband, but remained with them, asking Alina for advice. Lith didn't want to ruin that moment for them, so he avoided talking about the impending danger nor the distress death vision caused him. Tista couldn't take her eyes off his white griffin pin, asking a lot of questions about the academy. Lith didn't lie to her, describing in detail the teaching methods, the harsh competitive environment, and the need for commoners to get a guilty ballot as soon as they got admitted. The more Tista learned about it, the less attractive the perspective of attending the academy became. She knew nothing about combat. Tista used mostly light and darkness magic for her job, while she practiced the other elements only for doing the daily chores. My situation is pretty much the same as Quilla's, but I doubt I'll find someone like Lil Brother to watch my back. Even if I get admitted, I'd be quite old compared to my schoolmates. Damn it, I want to learn more about magic. I'm tired of the daily routine. Lucia is starting to feel a cage like home previously was. At the same time, it's a safe haven for me. The academy sounds like the forbidden love child of a viper's nest and a warrior's arena. I want to test my limits, but it's kind of extreme as first challenge. Ballot or not, I don't know if I can stand so much pressure. Tista needed time to think, so she went back in her room to study the offensive spells from her grimoire. She learned them years ago at Litha's and Nana's insistence, but after never using them, Tista remembered only the simplest ones. After taking Rena home, Lith warped to a random location in the Tron Woods. After checking not to be followed, he warped to an irrelevant spot at Lucia's outskirts. Warp steps should make following me impossible, even to the Queen's core. Being careful never hurts, though. After coming through each gate, he would walk for a few dozen meters in a random direction before opening another. Lith hoped that the multiple spatial jumps would allow him to lose his tail, even if an artifact capable of opening again or tracing warp steps did exist. Only then he opened a gate to the Mana Geyser in the Tron Woods. Without Solus, he wouldn't be able to recognize the place, if not for the fact that the Mana Geyser was the only spot where weeds, grass, and flowers had already started to grow again in the scarred ground. The damage caused by the abomination he had fought alongside the other 3 kings of the woods wouldn't recover until spring, if not even later. Everything reminded him of Protector, making Lith's blood boil. FCK Protector. I'm here for much more important stuff. Solus, do you mind turning into the tower? This time he didn't say he needed her, nor he gave her an order. Lith was really asking her permission. Sure. Solus had no idea of what was happening. To reduce the suffering from isolation as much as she could, she had found a way to fall into a kind of deep slumber. Solus had missed all the recent conversations and thought Lith just wanted to train or forge master something. Not what, but who. I think it's time for us to talk. I didn't want to have this conversation without giving you a physical presence and a voice too. Solus' consciousness took her wisp form. The sphere of light was bigger and brighter than the last time he saw it. When she was close enough, Lith noticed another change. There was something at its center, something that looked almost solid. Chapter 253. Thanks. After all the time she spent alone, Solus was confused by his apparently kind behavior. Lith placed his right hand on the wisp, making her experience physical contact for the first time in months. The wisp turned out to be solid enough to stop his hand. Solus could feel not only Lith's warmth, but also his touch. It was the closest thing to a caress she had ever experienced, so she couldn't help but quiver. Interesting. Now your wisp form is tangible and warm. Lith was amazed. He had expected his hand to go through it. Indeed. What were you saying? Solus was happy with her development, but for some reason, she felt really embarrassed. Lith quickly recovered from the surprise, remembering why they were there. It's easier if I show you, rather than tell. If he was talking with anyone else, Lith would have asked her if she really meant what she said the last time they talked. Yet with Solus, there was no need to. Once their minds were fused, there was no way to lie or hide even the most embarrassing thought. That was the reason why once they had started trusting each other, they had stopped doing it. Lith, because after considering Solus as a person, a girl at that, there were many parts of his past he wasn't willing to brag about. Solus, because the more her personality developed, the more she felt the need to have some personal space. Lith clearly remembered how terrifying was his life from her point of view. Always scared of losing him in battle, to the point of sacrificing herself during the fight with the Talons, or almost degrading her own core to keep him alive when he failed to save Protector. He remembered how much she had suffered hiding the truth from him, that she was aware of what coming clean could cause, yet when faced between her Sake and Lith's, she had always put him first, no matter the consequences. Lith shared with her all his memories about the last weeks. Every minute, every second was unveiled. He wasn't afraid to admit how much he cared for her, how being separated made him feel incomplete. Wait, this is... Solus was shocked by the amount of information. It was the equivalent of a one-sided mind fusion. Lith was showing her everything without receiving anything in return. Why didn't you fuse our minds again? She asked. Because I don't want to force you again. Your lie hurt me deeply, but you're still my Solus. You're the only person I never had a lie to, and I don't want for it to change. So, I'm doing something that I usually don't. I'm showing myself vulnerable. I understand how my behavior must be terrifying for someone forced to ride shotgun with me without never touching the wheel. I understand how Protector's words made you feel and why you lied to me. I'm willing to forgive you, but you have to promise me never to do it again. I'm not perfect, so if you disagree with me, nag at me until my ears bleed, kick my ass, whatever. Just don't act behind my back again. Solus was so happy that the walls of the tower trembled a little. She wasn't used to expressing herself with words anymore, so she triggered a mind fusion, sharing as much as he did, no matter how embarrassing it was or how pathetic she looked in those memories. Lith felt Solus's pain like she felt his own. Their lives were like two crooked towers, but as long as they could lean onto each other, they would stand forever. Lith held the wisp tight against his chest, shocked by the amount of suffering she had gone through in so little time. The raw strength of the emotions he was experiencing made Lith completely lower his guard. It was only the second time that he had allowed it to happen, the first being when he was ready to die at the Scorpicore's hand as long he and Solus fought side by side. Neither of them noticed the wisp going through Lith's chest despite having achieved a physical form. Once their minds and bodies were fused, the same happened to their mana cores. They pulsed in unison, beating at the same rhythm while tendrils of energy connected them. The two mana cores revolved around each other like twin stars. The resonance between them made Lith's core turn bright cyan, on the verge of turning blue, while Solus's bright yellow core turned into a bright green, one simply by absorbing the excess energy that Lith's body usually dispersed, not being able to handle it. The tower was shaken to its foundations. Rumbling noises forced them to snap out of their trance. Lith noticed that everything was different, even though he had no idea why. The walls looked sturdier, the space around him larger. Lith could perceive the mana flow passing through the magical artifact, like he could hear his own heartbeat. The debris leading to the first floor had disappeared, just like Solus. I'm inside you. That's a gross way to put it. Are you listening to yourself? Lith made a retching sound. That came out wrong. She giggled. Do you have any idea about what happened? None. Lith replied, noticing that his left hand was moving by itself, touching his own face. So, this is how having a body feels. It's amazing. Half of Lith's face was shocked, The other had a delighted and quite feminine expression. Wait, you can move my body at will. It seems so. She shrugged. Want to go check the first floor? I am curious. Curious? Aren't you supposed to know what's what as soon as your body repairs? The situation was becoming odder by the second. Normally, yes, but nothing is normal now. I think that us merging is an anomaly of sorts, temporarily boosting my strength. I have no clue about what's upstairs, like I don't know how we fused. I hope you are right about our condition being only momentary. It would be creepy in the long term. Lith shuddered. No need to be shy. I've seen you naked plenty of times. She mocked him. I know, and I'm fine with it. Yet this gives a new whole meaning to the words touching oneself. Solus laughed heartily before realizing the full meaning of his words and blushed from the embarrassment. I would never do that. I believe in your goodwill, but you don't remember how having a body feels. To prove his point, Lith took out a cream puff out of the dimensional pocket. It was still fresh as when he took it from the Academy's canteen. Stop after one bite. Solus sniffed the pastry. Its sweet smell was intoxicating. She took a bite, and then another, until there was nothing left. Sorry, but it was too good. We ate them in the past, but sharing your senses is like the trial version of the real deal. She said apologetically. Lith sighed, climbing the stairs leading to the first floor. Chapter 254. While climbing the stairs, Lith didn't know what to think of his current situation. Since he and Solus had fused, most of his usual rage and resentment seemed to have taken a rain check. Solus could perceive his happiness for being reunited with her, which made her even happier. Because of the mind fusion, their feelings reinforced one another in a loop. Not knowing when it would end, Lith fed Solus all of his favorite foods, letting her experience them firsthand. The care and the attention she received, plus all those new tastes, sent her on cloud nine. By my maker, everything is so good. Are you sure I can eat so much? You had lunch barely an hour ago, she said, worried for Lith's stomach. Don't worry, it's nothing we can't cure. We should enjoy this pink-colored glasses moment until it lasts. The first floor was quite peculiar. The furniture was comprised of a few empty bookshelves, lots of mirrors, each one of different shapes and sizes, and a globe. It was similar to the one he had back on Earth, but this one represented Mogar, and it was huge, with a radius of over 1/2 meter, 2 foot. Unlike his childhood nightstand lamp, it didn't show the whole world. Only the areas where Lith had been and the places he had visited were depicted. He focused on the map of the region that was stored inside Solaspedia, recalling the names of cities and rivers, but the globe remained blank. So, it's not a matter of knowledge. His voice was muffled by all the food Solus was stuffing herself with. It only matters where we have been. I wonder why. Any idea, Solus? None. Hey, there's even the Academy. Both of them, actually. Even the Lightning Griffin Academy is marked. The moment she made Lith's finger touch the Academy, the globe's surface zoomed in, projecting a 3D hologram, precise down to the last detail. The hologram was colored in shades of red, giving them a mild headache whenever they focused on a specific room they had visited during their short trip, before Headmistress Linnea rejected Lith's application. Lith then touched the white griffin, getting the same result. I'm feeling a pattern here. Lith pondered. Let's try the mining town. The headache persisted. The holograms representing the known areas nearby the Academy were all as red as detailed. Okay, now let's give the Tron Woods a shot. Lith had never been outside the White Griffin's forest, since thanks to the Martianess he had access to the Mage Association's warp steps that brought him directly inside the Academy. He could have chosen the Lightning Griffin's outskirts, from where he departed along Count Lark, but he clearly remembered how tightly patrolled was the area. So, he picked a closer and much more harmless location. This time the hologram was blue, and the headache was gone. Lith focused on the clearing in the woods where he used to train in the past. When he zoomed to a specific location, the hologram disappeared, and Lith felt his attention drawn to the biggest mirror in the room. It had a silver circular frame, and it was so big to occupy most of the west wall. The surface of the mirror rippled, and the image of the room it had reflected until a moment ago was replaced by the clearing spot Lith had been looking for. Could this be? Lith pressed his hand against the image, but nothing happened. He could feel the cold glass surface under his fingers. Maybe we should send mana into it. Solus snapped Lith's fingers, channeling the energy from the mana geyser through the tower and into the mirror. The mana quickly rotated along the frame's edges, making it emit an orange glow. The glass then turned into a silvery liquid that was drained by the frame. Yet the image in front of Lith's eyes didn't change. He was now able to hear the familiar noises of the wood's wildlife, to feel the chilly breeze blow on his face. A personal long-distance warp steps. Lith was amazed as much as confused. He tried several locations he knew, even some very close to Dirios, the capital of the Marquisate. They were hundreds of kilometers afar, yet they managed to open them effortlessly, without using a drop of their own mana. There are only two problems, Solus pointed out. One, we can only pick deserted places. If someone looks through the warp steps, they could see inside the tower, and that would get us into trouble. Two, how the heck do we come back? If the tower stays here, either we split or this thing is useless. Lith nodded, letting his arm across the dimensional gate. An unpleasant sensation spread through his body. Both Lith and Solus felt their minds drifting apart. Their connection became weaker and weaker, until he pulled his arm back into the tower. Guess our condition really is temporary. Probably will revert back to normal as soon as we get outside the tower. They were still recovering from the surprise when the walls shook violently, cracking in multiple spots. The tremors were strong enough to make Lith almost lose his balance. What the heck was that? Well, this room shouldn't exist in the first place. Solus ate a chocolate sprinkled biscuit. If for any reason our fusion gets broken, it's likely everything will collapse on our heads. See, she pointed at the cracks that were disappearing as quickly as they had formed. Okay, so the globe represents all the places we can warp to. The headache probably means that a place is unavailable, at least at our current level. I prefer not to try forcing our way through the Academy's arrays. Not only do we risk getting detected, but we could also spend so much mana to get split. Let's check the rest of the stuff first. Yeah, too bad we don't get to understand how we are supposed to return here. The second biggest mirror in the room had a gold rectangular frame. It reflected an image that left them both flabbergasted. Lith had now a second pair of eyes, right above his eyebrows, and was shrouded in a golden aura. My aura has always been black and red. I suppose it's yours then. Lith shrugged. Solus winked at their reflection, making both left eyes close. Definitely mine. The question is, what the heck is this for? Lith injected the mirror with mana, the edges of which started to emit a blue glow. Instead of spinning, this time the mana seeped into the mirror until it emitted a humming sound. Okay, let's try visualizing stuff again. Lith thought about the White Griffin Academy, getting a splitting headache in return. Then it was Dirio's turn, but the result was the same. Lucia, then. The mirror turned black for a second before showing him the village's square. Lith discovered that he could move his perspective at will, watching and listening like he was actually there in person. He could move to any place he had been at least once in the past. By looking through a window, he could also enter inside the houses of the villagers. Their talks had no significance to him, so he kept experimenting with the limits of his scrying device. This thing sucks. Lith stamped his foot on the ground. I can't even see the whole village. The range is too short. For now, at least. Solus tried to console him, but she didn't believe her own words either. Chapter 255. Visiting this room is already a sneak peek. Who knows when we'll actually get it? If this is all it can do, then it's pretty terrible. She thought. Agreed. Lith replied. Mind fusion, remember? He added in response to her surprise. Solus felt stupid for a second. Then she had a crazy idea that made Lith's skin crawl. He focused on a small pebble in the middle of the street, using spirit magic to move it. Lith could perceive the tendrils of his mana moving through the air, wrapping around the stone. Moving it was as hard as it was an elephant. Lith tried a series of charm magic spells too, before giving up. Fire blackened only a spot the size of Pinhead. Water couldn't freeze, even with the weather being already cold, and earth magic didn't manage to crack it. It's useless. Yes, We can use magic even from this distance, but the effects are negligible. Unless Lith focused on the area surrounding the tower, and the image in the mirror changed accordingly. He could see and hear everything in 25 meters, 82 feet, radius. Like every single stone that composed Solus's body was his eyes and ears. He could even use life vision and Solus's mana sense at will, allowing him to spot all the animals and magical beasts in the vicinity. When he used Cure water magic on a dried-up tree, it had the same effect of a Tier 1 spell. I stand corrected. It doesn't suck at all. I can use it not only to scout everything within its area of effect, but I can also cast spells while being empowered by the tower and the mana geyser. This is a tremendous improvement to our defensive capabilities. Lith was overjoyed by the discovery. I wonder which one of these mirrors controls the arrays. Solus pondered. What arrays? I am bound to have several arrays at my disposal, both for protection and attack. Remember what Journey said? If every noble household has wards to protect against warp steps, I don't think my maker was so dumb to overlook the dangers of dimensional magic. Lith was about to move towards a mirror with a square frame, when his vision cracked, as if he was watching through a kaleidoscope. The room seemed to be spinning around, disorienting him and making Lith lose his balance. What the heck is happening? Suddenly the world wasn't so pink anymore. He didn't feel happy or relaxed, just angry. I guess our time has ran out. Solus calmly bit one last pastry while the tower rumbled ominously. The tremors increased while the room was shrinking in size. Countless cracks appeared on the walls. Like living snakes, they spread up to the ceiling, making dust and debris fall on their head. Lith's mind was too messed up to use dimensional magic for escaping. He couldn't see or focus properly with Solus's mind getting in and out of his own like it was a revolving door. He could only stumble toward the stairs, but everything happened too fast, even for his enhanced body. Huge sections of the ceiling came crashing down, forcing Lith to roll forward to avoid being squashed to death. A giant piece of stone fell on the stairs, blocking his way. FCK me sideways. He yelled while the whole room came down. The rubble weighed more than a ton, but instead of turning him into toothpaste, it simply pushed him down through the floor. The rock beneath his feet became immaterial for a second, letting him fall down to the ground level unharmed. He hadn't the time to use any spell, yet he was slowly descending through the air as he weighed nothing more than a leaf. Why so scared, dummy? Solus chuckled. The tower is my body, and so is every single piece of stone and furniture. I would never allow any harm to befall my beloved host. She smiled. Holy SHT, you are smiling. Lith pointed his finger to the figure that was floating in mid-air a few centimeters from him. It was a humanoid female, entirely made of golden light. It had no facial features, aside from her shining eyes, a smiling mouth, and a cascade of golden hair enveloping her whole body that floated in the air like she was moving underwater. What do you mean? Her mouth disappeared. Solus had barely the time to look down on her own hands when her body imploded on itself, returning to be a wisp made of light. FCK. Solus angrily swore. Can I see how did I look like through your memories? I don't think it's a good idea. Lith shook his head. Pretty pleased with the cherry on top? She begged while circling around him. Solus, it's for your own good. You wouldn't like what you see. Please, I need to know. She rammed into Lith's head to emphasize her point. We just reconciled. I don't want you to get angry or sad. I won't, I promise. Remember your words, because I will. Lith let his memories flow into their mind link. He had been true to his word. Solus didn't like it. What's this? C-cup, maybe more. FCK the light. Solus is a shorty, barely 1.54, 5 feet 1 inch high. Nice legs, sadly ass not applicable. Her belly looks kind of flabby. The images had more footnotes than a director's cut. Did you check me out in less than 5 seconds? Lith couldn't share a memory without everything that came attached to it. Yes, I told you it would make you angry, or sad, or both. That's why you made me promise. Guilty as charged. Lith nodded with a smirk. I'm the one stuck in a pubescent body for at least another few years, and as I told you before, You have no idea how it feels. I already have to keep everything I do and say in check. I have no control over my thoughts. Solus accepted his explanation, but was quite pissed off anyway. All this time wondering how I'd look like in a human body, and when I finally get to see it, my precious memory is ruined by those SHTTY remarks. Couldn't he just be stunned by my beauty? So, how do you plan on curing Alina? It's going to be tricky. Lith sighed, remembering the second reason he had decided to solve his conflict with Solus. He needed her help. This isn't just anybody, it's my mother we're talking about. I'm not going to take any risks. I can't afford using invigoration during the procedure. I need my full focus and for you to constantly monitor her vitals, just like we did to remove the undead's poisoning. If I slip up, you must prevent things from escalating. Don't worry, we can do it. We'll get Alina pregnant in a jiffy, she declared proudly, making Lith emit a retching sound. Goose! Oh, come on. You know what I mean. We just need to get inside her and do our job. Please stop, Lith begged her. This is even worse. Fine, I'll shut up. She mind-pouted. I don't know if the prolonged isolation made me socially awkward or it's just that fusing myself with Lith infected me with his dirty mind. While pondering about her poor choice of words, Solus found herself resting on his lap. Lith was planning ahead the procedure while caressing the wisp as it was a puppy. Before she could realize it, Solus fell asleep for the first time in over 8 years. Chapter 256. Lith didn't have the heart to wake Solus. She had never slept before, and he had no idea if it had been made possible by her improved wisp form or because of their temporary fusion. In the past, even when she accompanied him in his dreams, Solus was wide awake. She was able to follow him only thanks to their mind link and would get no rest from the experience. After an hour, Lith had finished planning the procedure to cure his mother and even devised contingency measures for everything that could go wrong he was capable of foreseeing. Yet Solus was still sound asleep. After shielding her with a hush spell, silencing the area around the wisp, he called Professor Vaster. Over the last year, Lith had exchanged contact runes with all the professors he had a good relationship with. Lith, my boy, glad to finally hear from you, Vaster said with a jovial voice while twirling his mustaches. I was a little offended when you left without even saying goodbye, but now I understand why you did it. You do. Lith had no idea what Vasta was talking about. He was inwardly cursing at himself for committing such blatant discourtesy. Between Solus and his foul mood, he had been too sick of the academy to stick around even a second longer. Yeah, thank the gods you left so quickly. When the rankings got out, everything went south. The whole top 3 in the light department is something that hasn't happened in years. A commoner, a noble, and an old noble at that. It sounds almost like the beginning of a joke. Too bad so many people can't see past the end of their noses. In less than an hour, we have been swamped in complaint calls and letters. Most of them are currently warming my old bones. Vaster showed him a fireplace fueled by still, closed envelopes. I expected to find you upset, maybe even outraged. I see you're pretty calm despite Linjos's trickery. You should have told us. It would have spared us a lot of troubles. What do you mean? What trickery? Lith's surprise appeared genuine. Son, remind me never to play cards against you. Vasta laughed. You know, even if we aren't allowed to share the students' grades, we professors do something called talk about our most promising student. When I heard about you placing 3rd, I asked Wainmeyer why she gave you such a bad grade, right before she asked me the very same question. Bottom line, we know what happened, and we understand why it was necessary. If a 3rd place triggered such a mess, I can't think what would have happened if it was the 2nd or the 1st. Vasta sighed. Wainmeyer sure didn't take it well. When the warden specialization professor started boasting of their 1st place, she almost roasted him alive. That woman really has a soft spot for you. It makes one wonder if the rumors about you two are true. Vaster said it as a joke, but Lith could sense it was actually a serious question. I wish. He replied honestly. It was the best way to avoid ruining both their reputations and tainting his achievements with false allegations. Don't be so impatient. I get older women are charming, but time only moves forward. For a moment, Vaster seemed to be really tired. Soon you'll be old enough to court all the Wainmeyer in the world. After that, you'll be so old they will pay you no attention unless marriage is at stake. If only there was a way to live forever young. Enough with my whining. To what do I owe the pleasure of this call? I was thinking about healing cut tendons, regenerate missing fingers. Little things just to make a quick buck. Lith explained. I have no idea how much I should ask for it. He wasn't worried about asking too much, but to be underselling his services. As an intern at the academy, he always did what he was asked to without thinking about the fares. Vaster pondered for a bit before answering. Skin, tendons, and maybe a tooth or two are manageable for a single mage, but I wouldn't call even a finger a little thing. Without a mage providing the treatment and another the life force at the same time, it's a risky procedure. Anyway, there is no law against being young and reckless. If you were already graduated, I'd say 10 silver coins to split between 2 mages is a fair price. Since you are still a student, 1 is more than enough. After you kill your first patient, feel free to call me or Marth at any time if you need to talk. Since Solus kept sleeping, Lith used that time to call Wainmeyer and Marth to make up for his blunder. They were happy to hear from him and wished him a good winter break. When he could finally go back home, it was almost dinner time, but he was forced to skip it due to all the food Solus had shoved down his throat while they were fused. The next morning, Lith woke up in his bedroom, perfectly rested. No matter how effective invigoration was, he wanted to be at his peak condition for the procedure. Solus could act as a life support system in case something went wrong, but everything else weighed on his shoulders. I really don't want another sibling, but I realize how lonely my parents must feel having gone from living with 5 kids to just 1. Once Tista and I leave, maybe I should buy them a house somewhere, so they do not feel so isolated from the rest of the world. Lith opened the window of his room, letting the chilly morning air in. The sun had still to rise, and during the night had snowed a little. He warmed up the house and the floors with fire magic before leaving for the bakery. Even after a good night's sleep, Lith was still full. The thought of going to the village's bakery was enough to make him sick. Yet Alina had expressed so much joy at the idea of eating fresh white bread that he couldn't deny her that small luxury. No matter how much she trusts me, Mom is bound to be scared. Even if I'm not going to cut her open as a surgeon would, she is aware of the risks any procedure, even the simplest one, implies. Lith thought, a positive mindset can help me during the operation and make her recovery faster. Also, I'm curious to see how that Beastard will welcome me now that he needs me. Vexel Cornerstone, Brina's father, was one of those that almost died at Litha's hand for not defending Tista from Gareth's harassment. Ever since then, he lived in fear of Lith coming to finish what he had started, to the point of closing the shop whenever Vexel saw him. Lith grinned while opening a warp steps from his front door to outside the bakery. He could have gone right inside, but he preferred giving the people of Lucia the illusion warp steps had limits. Otherwise, as soon as they lost something, they would blame him. Chapter 257. Sure, there was nothing they could do to him or his family, but it would still hurt his reputation. Based on what Professor Vaster told him, many nobles were probably out for his blood. He couldn't afford to risk for the rumors to turn into mass hysteria, giving those old farts a pretext to doubt his integrity, or even worse, get him expelled. The 5th year was the last one he had to pretend to be a normal mage. After that, he could just reveal to be a genius magician, just like the magi of the past. I'm really sorry about yesterday. I knew I shouldn't have eaten so much. Solus said, don't worry about it. A little fasting has never killed anyone. How is sleeping? Incredible. She replied, all of my stress and worries feel so distant now. It's like being born anew. I even dreamed a little, I think. Too bad I can't remember anything. Lith nodded while crossing the dimensional corridor to his destination, a few kilometers away. When the shop's door opened, the little bell above it chimed, alerting Vexel of a potential customer. Welcome. The baker almost choked on his words when he recognized Lith. He was dressed like a farmer, with a simple brown shirt and pants, but looked nothing like one. His clothes were pristine, without one spot on mud, and so were his shoes. Vexel looked through the window, noticing that the snow outside was still immaculate. I like 5 loaves of bread and 20 pastries, thanks. Vexel had prepared a speech, hoping to make him feel guilty for his lack of sympathy towards someone less fortunate than him. Brina was the same age as Tista after all, and they both suffered from their condition. How could he be so insensitive despite knowing the pain she was going through? Yet he was unable to speak. Lith exuded a cold aura that sent a shiver down Vexel's spine despite the heat coming from the oven in the back room. There was something wrong with him. He managed to move over the squeaky old floor without making a noise. Why the heck does he say nothing? Lith was surprised by Vexel's meek attitude. Usually he doesn't hide his hostility. Ups. Sorry, I'm out of practice. Solus explained. I forgot about having to cut down the killing intent you emit naturally. Since your last 2 breakthroughs, you always mix a bit of darkness magic with your usual glare whenever you are angry. Mages don't notice it because their mana flow protects them from it, but normal humans are weaker. Once Solus took action, Vexel discovered to have held his breath until that moment. Lith didn't look like a ferocious beast anymore. He was back being an annoying prick. Can I get my food? I don't have all day. Lith snorted. Vexel inwardly cursed at himself, handing over the bread and the pastries as efficiently as he could. It's on the house. With a single wave of the hand, Lith made the goods on the counter disappear in the pocket dimension, replacing them with the money at the same time. I owe you nothing, and I like things as they are. Lith sneered at him. You should have thought about it when I was starving, not now that I have enough money to have a bakery of my own. Keep your fake kindness for yourself, or I'll shove your bullshit right where it came from. Who knows, you may even like it. Lith? Is that you? Brina's voice came out of the back room, soon followed by the sound of quick steps that announced her arrival. Brina, have you considered my offer? Lith's voice was calm, but lacked any warmth. He was neither hostile nor friendly towards her. Brina was carrying a basket of bread with her right arm, always covered by a long glove, while her face and left arm were dusted with flour. She wore a net over her hair and was smiling a lot. Yes, of course. How much is it? 1 silver coin for the whole skin. 5 silver coins for each finger. The idea of losing 16 silver coins at once made Vexel's heart skip a beat. That's it. Brina sighed in relief, making her father inwardly curse at her. As for a discount, you damn woman. If you flaunt our money, he will find an excuse to raise the price even more. When you can start, Lith had actually asked much more than Professor Vaster suggested, to leave some space for negotiations. The outcome was a pleasant surprise. I could ask for more, but it's better to shear a sheep rather than butchering it. Lith thought. Not today. I already have another client scheduled. Is tomorrow fine with you? Yes. She nodded, incapable of hiding her surprise. What do they find you so fast? Word travels fast. Plus, I'm that good. Lith gave her a thumbs up. I need you to be perfectly rested, so take it easy today. Also, the procedure will take a toll on you. Before we start, eat as much as you can. You'll need energy. Remember, I'm a healer, not a miracle worker. Lith walked out the door, disappearing from sight before it closed behind him. Vexel and Brina looked out of the window almost at the same time. The snow on the porch was still immaculate. Dad, do you think the blacksmith is right? Is he really a god? Zekel Proudhammer is just like my chamber pot, full of SHT. Vexel wanted to spit out of disgust just by hearing that name, but managed to stop in time. He hated the blacksmith's guts. Ever since Rena had become part of his household, Tista would always treat them first and for free, while Vexel had to stand in line like an idiot. During the city assemblies, Zekel would always have his way, getting to pay fewer taxes compared to others simply by casually mentioning Lith or his daughter-in-law. To make things worse, the blacksmith always flaunted the enchanted tools he bought from Lith, saying they were all presents. Unbeknownst to Vexel, it was a lie. Lith only gave presents to Rena, while Zekel exchanged with him precious metals to get what he wanted. Before going back home, Lith went to Rena's house, giving her some sweets, a few potions, and checking on her and the baby just to be safe. Chapter 258. After going back home, Lith finished preparing breakfast for everyone and used invigoration to recover the energy spent by using the warp steps. The procedure took place in his parents' bedroom as soon as they finished eating. Lith had Solus take the form of a small disc that he placed over his mother's belly. What is that thing? Alina asked. It's a focus. It will help me direct and control the magical energies. He lied in response. Solas's core was weak and her mana capacity small, but she was able to use invigoration as well. Her role was to check Alina's condition, using her own mana to fix any mistake Lith could make or at least buy enough time for him to stabilize his mother. He also needed Tista's presence to use her as a blueprint. First, he blocked Alina's abdomen pain receptors. Then he destroyed the scar tissue, causing infertility while reshaping the organ to make it resemble Tista's healthy one. It was the first time he attempted something like that, so it took Lith several hours to complete the procedure. When he finished, he was exhausted. Damn, ever since I burned part of my life force, I get tired faster than usual, and my stamina has yet to completely recover. Using invigoration on 2 people at once for imaging was more difficult than I thought. Then I had to cut away the scar tissue 1 layer at a time to not cause too much damage. I also had to prevent her from losing too much blood or going into shock. Unlike when I cured Tista, I couldn't immediately replace the destroyed tissue with a healthy one, since it was the excess tissue causing Mom's infertility. I can only hope that everything is fine now. Is it over? Alina asked with watery eyes. Despite Litha's precautions, she had experienced a burning sensation in her abdomen the whole time. The blood loss had made her dizzy from time to time, stopping only when Lith infused her with part of his life force. Yes, he used a clean towel to wipe the sweat from his face. Can I get up now? I really need to stretch my legs a bit. Not a chance. Lith forced Alina to rest while he sat near her, checking her condition from time to time. Regrowing organs inside the human body was something he had practiced at the academy, but altering their shape by switching between darkness and light magic was another thing entirely. He realized how big was the edge true magic gave him compared to normal healers. Unlike them, Lith was able to split a procedure into different steps instead of being forced to complete it in one go. It had given him the time to share part of his life force with his mother when necessary and to lessen the strain on her body by taking a break from time to time. He also used those pauses to recover his strength with invigoration. The procedure had turned out to be much harder than predicted. Using invigoration on 2 people at the same time while exerting surgical precision magic was taxing for both the mind and the body. There were so many things to check at all times that he was sure he would have failed if not for true magic coupled with Solas's help. She had checked Alina's physical condition at all times, allowing Lith to focus only on the procedure, and as a life force for replacing most of the blood lost by herself. Only when she couldn't keep up due to her low mana capacity, Solas had asked for Litha's help. Solas remained with Alina all night long, making sure that everything was all right. Only after 24 hours had passed without complications, Lith could finally breathe a sigh of relief. Only then Lith went to Brina's house, removing the scar from the whole arm and making the 2 fingers she had left perfectly functional. The only downside of the treatment was that the new skin was pale as milk, but Brina didn't care one bit. How do you feel? Lith checked her with invigoration. Since the procedure was only on the external skin, he had not shared with her any life force, hoping it wouldn't be necessary. I feel good. Can I show it to my mother now? Feeling okay doesn't mean being okay. Stand up slowly. Brina did as asked, but she felt so dizzy she needed to sit again. I guess you were right. God, suddenly I feel so weak and hungry. It seems I almost pushed her physique too far. Vaster is right. A single healer can't restore fingers without endangering the life of the patient. He decided to split the treatment in 3 different days, 1 for each finger. It made everything easier for both of them and allowed him to better study the regeneration process without witnesses that could notice the anomaly his magic was. While at the academy, he had to use true magic like it was fake. Now he could finally use it as he saw fit. After Brina, several other villagers came to him for help, and every single patient provided Lith with invaluable knowledge. After a few days, Tista entered Litha's room while he was using accumulation to further refine his mana core. Say what you want, little brother, but after seeing what you did for Mom and Brina, I don't think that being a healer is just a job. It's something that brings hope and joy to other people. That's why I want your help. I'd really like enrolling in the academy. Lith was sitting on the floor cross-legged. Her words merely caused him to raise an eyebrow. Once again, that's incredibly naive of you. I can't wait for you to meet Professor Manohar. If he can't change your mind, then no one can. He sighed. Let me be honest, right now you have no chance of getting admitted. You are old for the 4th year, your mastery of the elements is sloppy, and you have no sponsor. At those words, Tista's smile disappeared. Use next year to practice magic until it becomes second nature to you. Then, if I manage to graduate, I can pull some strings and make everything easier for you. Tista rushed to hug him when Lith stopped her by raising his hand. She suddenly had no control over her body anymore. Tista was pinned against the wall with her feet dangling a few centimeters from the floor. Tista, you're a pretty girl, and the world is a harsh place. This could happen every time you walk alone in a corridor. Show me that you can take care of yourself. At first, she thought it was just a bad joke, but when Lith refused to let her go, she discovered she couldn't even call for help. Whenever she opened her mouth, no voice came out of it. It's just pure magic. You can do it. Litha's words helped her to regain her cool, yet it took her a while to break the spell. Why did you do that? Lith replied by telling her about all that had happened to him from his first day at the academy. About the hazing attempts, the mean words from the students and professors, and even how Floria had almost got her ped. Chapter 259. Despite Linjos's best intentions, the academy is still a survival of the fittest environment. If you go in there with a weak mentality, you will not last even a month. Chore magic is your sword and shield against humans, since it's quick and effective. Practice it until you get as good as I am. Lith had expected for Tista to be shocked and to need some time before making her decision. He was only half right. She immediately asked Litha's guidance, to the point of requesting homework to improve her control over the elements. After a month passed, her magic foundations had improved by leaps and bounds. Because of the harsh weather, she could spend most of the time indoor practicing. Litha's training course focused more on finesse and surgical precision rather than use magic for bashing stuff. It allowed them to safely perform sparring sessions inside the house by fighting for the control of the color of candles, changing the temperature of a glass of water, or use earth magic to juggle with an increasing number of pebbles. When the weather was good, Litha's family would use warp steps to visit their neighbors or the village. Alina was the only one with a communicator amulet, so she could always call Lith to have them warp back home anytime they wanted. Lith used those days to go back in the forest and conduct experiments with forge mastering. It had taken a while, but the package from Linjos had finally arrived. After learning of his ranking, Lith had spent almost all his points immediately. He had purchased a skinwalker armor and several magic crystals of different purity. The skinwalker armor was similar to his uniform, but better in every way. The elemental and physical protections were stronger. Also, by injecting mana into it, Lith could boost its self-repair speed. The armor's best trait was its adaptability. It could shape-shift into different forms. The only requirement was for Lith to provide the enchantment a sample of the clothing he wanted it to reproduce. Thanks to the skinwalker armor, Lith now had a whole wardrobe of enchanted clothes. They would all offer him a great degree of protection, and he wouldn't remain naked for a second like it happened when he switched between clothes via the dimensional pocket. Lith stored inside the gemstone his farmer clothes, the hunting suit, the academy's uniform, and the expensive noble clothes that Lark had bought him. Now this is the only suit I'll ever need. Lith had chosen the skinwalker armor not only because it greatly improved his defensive abilities, but also because it made possible to easily blend in with any crowd and provided him a sample of magic crystal-imbued clothes. He had now an enchanted item he could study with invigoration, which properties he could attempt to replicate and improve by using true magic. Lith had spent the rest of his points to buy mana crystals. There were too many unanswered questions about them. He was eager to perform experiments with a mana blade away from prying eyes. Realizing a mana blade like the one he used during the magic crystal class had been an easy feat, it was just a handle made of solid silver, enchanted to have mana pathways, but no pseudo-core. The only issue was the price. Lith had to pay for both the material and the craftsmanship, since he was no blacksmith. Lith managed to cut his losses by exchanging his forge mastering works with Zekel's. The blacksmith was eager to acquire dimensional rings to safely store his possession and enchanted tools to make his life easier, just like Lith was eager to get his hands on free materials. Thanks to his experiments, Lith discovered that if instead of cutting along a magic crystal's lines he used a mana blade on the cracks that Invigoration revealed, he could recharge the low-quality ones or increase their purity by 1 tier by providing them enough mana. The crystal's cracks were capable of absorbing and store his mana, but only up to a degree. As soon as the crystal couldn't contain more energy, the cracks disappeared. All the attempts of further refining the gemstones ended up in failure. It seems that the cracks are the spots from which the crystal was still absorbing the surrounding world energy when it was mined. It means that it had yet room to develop further, and that's exactly what happens when I inject mana into it. I wonder if the so-called crystal scraps are actually what I need to refine better quality gemstones. If they work like my mana core, the mana crystals need to grow up to a certain size before shrinking to compress and boost their energy, and then they need to grow again, repeating the process. If I'm right, it means that high-quality crystals require not only an abundant mana source, but also a lot of time to properly develop. Since my core took years to turn from red to cyan, and its max size is that of marble, I can't imagine how many decades it takes for a mana crystal as big as those I saw down in the mine to form. Unless I find a way to artificially grow them at a faster rate, buying and charging low-quality crystals is the best I can do. Refining them would take too much time. My mana core takes precedence since I can't buy a better one with money. Soon only 1 month of winter was left, and Lith's birthday was closing in. The prolonged rest made Lith recover most of his strength, while teaching Tista turned out to be a great way for him to further improve his foundations about magic. Everything he taught her about chore magic also applied to true magic. Tista asked him a lot of questions about silent magic and multicasting, some so peculiar that he had never thought about such niche cases. Unlike him, that was used to think big since he was little, try to improve the effects or the range of his spells, Tista thought small by following his teachings, focusing more on micromanaging the mana. To answer her, Lith had to revise and deepen his understanding of the flow of mana. After many trials, experimenting together with her, Lith was able to improve the way he waved spells and to further simplify multicasting. The only times Tista had the opportunity to put into practice her new skills was when Nana had to leave the village either for personal reasons or because of house calls. Lith would spend those days locked up in the tower, trying to incorporate magic crystals into his creations. Lith's aim was to reproduce in Earth's house facilities, providing his family with running water, lighting, and most importantly, a real bathroom. After getting used to the Academy's lifestyle, not having a bathtub and being forced to use a chamber pot again was quite traumatic for him. His elemental stones could provide the first 2, but to make them last until his return, he had to mass-produce them. Elemental stones were just a poor imitation of magic crystals that he had invented before even knowing the crystals existed. They could store a single spell, needing to be recharged after every use. Even the weakest red magic crystal held much more mana than dozens of elemental stones. Also, it could be turned on and off like a switch, making it last much longer. For any other young mage, using red mana crystals would be too expensive. Low-quality crystals didn't recharge by themselves, and once they ran out of power, they had to be changed. Lith could simply pretend to replace them with new ones, since he was able to power them up at will. Even with the experience gained developing the elemental stones on his own and having studied the Academy's tools for a whole year, the task turned out to be harder than he expected. At first, he used only the lowest quality stones. Lith expected them to be lost, or even worse, to explode. Lith had no idea how to link a pseudo-core to a crystal since it was a subject of the 5th year, which he had yet to begin. He used the Skinwalker armor as a template, searching for a way to reproduce its schematics using true magic only. After over 2 months, Lith had yet to find a way to make the process safe. There were only 2 weeks left before his birthday, when he received a call from Martianus Distar. Chapter 260. Your ladyship, to what do I owe the pleasure of this call? Lith gave her a bow. Not only Miriam Distar was his sponsor at the White Griffin Academy, but she was also his most powerful backer. First of all, congratulations are in order. The ranking you achieved brings great prestige to both our households and puts a muzzle on all those who wanted to prosecute me for strong-arming Linjos into accepting your application. I'm sorry to have caused you so many troubles. Lith bowed again, aware of the meaning of her words. The Marchioness was a busy woman. She would never call him to exchange niceties. Hers was a business call, and she was reminding Lith about how much he owed her before asking him for a favor. Don't be. She dismissed his apologies with a wave of her hand, surprising Lith quite a bit. Politics work like that. If you cannot attack someone's actions, then you attack their reputation. Remember this well. Once you have made some powerful enemies, they will criticize you no matter what you do. It's something you must get used to if you ever decide to join the political arena. Thanks for your concern, but it's not my intention. I plan to devote my life to magic and magical research. Wealth and status are just a mean to an end to me. I think the Marquisate is in good, capable hands already. Lith chose his words carefully. The Marchioness game was still unclear to him, so he decided to make it clear that he had no desire to become one of her competitors. Once he became a mage, Lith would receive a last name and a noble title. Yet unless he also accepted the role and responsibilities that ruling his lands implied, he wouldn't become a true noble. His title would simply be nominal, giving him status and authority over the lesser nobles, but no wealth or annuities. Many professors of the academy had chosen that kind of life, serving their country with their magic rather than as feudal lords. Thanks for your kind words. The Marchioness nodded her head in approval. Now let's get down to business. The reason I called you is to inform you about the progress we made with the sealed box and the coded message you delivered to me. Sadly, despite countless hours of studies, my forge masters were unable to open it. It detonated, leaving behind little clues. If only we had more than one, things could have been different. She sighed. The contents we managed to salvage matched your hypothesis. It contained a lot of alchemical tools that could have been used to synthesize and transport the toxin. It also carried enchanted items, but the explosion destroyed them, leaving nothing we could identify. Damn, I know that already. Lith thought. If only I had a decent excuse to provide her some of those useless trinkets I found, I could understand the bigger picture. Too bad there was no way to explain my stockpile of boxes. On the bright side, we have finally managed to decipher the message. The Marchioness continued. It contained a series of instructions and names. The instructions explained the timing and dosage of the toxin, so at this point is irrelevant information. The names are quite interesting, though. They belong both to members of the Academy staff and the students. We know from the Royal Constable's investigation that only a part of the Academy staff listed was involved in the poisoning scheme. The others were simply approached and found ill-suited for recruiting because of their loyalty to the kingdom or simply due to their cowardly nature. The problem is that we cannot interrogate students as we did for the staff. Accusing young heirs of noble households of treason would mean to implicate the whole bloodline. Those are more intricate than a spiderweb. One wrong move without hard evidence could escalate things, especially if the kids are actually innocent. Just being publicly suspected of high treason would mean for the households to lose their reputation, upsetting the balance of power in the court. As I told you earlier, in the political arena, it's not enough to be guiltless. You must also appear guiltless. The slightest suspicion can make you persona non grata in the right circles, not to mention your business relationship with the other nobles or the crown. It can turn a family on the rise into one in decline. The crown can't allow itself to lose even a single ally. That's why I have thought of an unorthodox method to continue the investigation. Dyrus' household. After the closing of the academy, Uriel Dyrus was having the hardest time of his life, to the point that he often remembered Balkir's attack with nostalgia. At least back then he had friends and enemies. A safe zone and a danger zone. Everything was perfectly black and white. Now his whole world was in shades of gray, so similar between them that the only way to distinguish SHT from chocolate was by the smell. His parents and his future in-laws paraded him almost daily during social events and parties, forcing Uriel to always keep his uniform and the golden pin on. The situation caused him a huge amount of stress, since he was forced to spend a lot of time with Libya, his future wife, while pretending he enjoyed her company. The more Uriel knew her, the more he found himself contemplating Litha's suggestion about how easy it would be to arrange for her to an accidental fall from a window. Also, every time someone complimented him for his achievement, Uriel prayed to the gods to make him disappear or put him out of his misery, whatever they found more convenient. Linjos's trickery with the rankings was like a poison knife in his heart. With each present and congratulation he received for his undeserved position, his condition got worse. In 2 months, he had barely the time to touch a single spellbook. Uriel felt like an exotic beast. No one was interested in what he thought or had to say, only in the griffin-shaped golden pin. To avoid another relapse in his addiction to tranquilizers, Archmage Dyrus, his father, had assigned him a personal assistant whose only task was to make sure Uriel would remain clean. Uriel's father had chosen for him a stunning young woman, so to not ever leave him alone, even at night. Yet her well-paid care and attention only contributed to making Uriel feel like a puppet. Neither my father nor Libya's family trust me. If this is how I'm going to live my life after I graduate, then I'd rather fail. I have no say in what I do, where I go, not even about who I spend my nights with. What good is to be a powerful mage if I'm only a spectator in my own life? The only silver lining in his current predicament was that the Ernest family attended to most of the events he was forced to take part in, allowing him to spend some time with his friends. He and Lith called each other from time to time with the communication amulet. Every time Lith told him about his slow life in the countryside, Uriel couldn't help but wish their roles were reversed. In his eyes, Litha's life was perfect, with a loving family, no responsibilities, and a bright future ahead, while his own resembled more an elaborate form of torture with each passing day. Chapter 261. Erna's Household. After the closing of the academy, Floria Ernest was having the time of her life. Her ranking was high enough to earn her father's admiration and to prevent her mother from nagging at her. She could spend her days as she pleased, riding, hunting, practicing her sword or magic. The only sour note was that she wasn't allowed to leave the estate. Winter was the time of the year when the Ernest, her father's household, and the Myrock, her mother's, would meet to spend some quality time and reinforce their bond. Since she attended the academy, it was her only opportunity to see her cousins and grandparents. There was no bad blood between the families, and although Floria found her mother's bloodline to be quite creepy, she loved them nonetheless. She was aware that while the Ernas embodied the shield protecting the royal family in broad daylight, the Myrock were the poisoned blade that was tasked of taking care of the enemies of the kingdom from the shadows, under the facade of being harmless second-rate nobles. Journey's side of the family was very interested in Freya and Quilla. Since the girls had no blood relationship with the Ernas, the Myrock hoped to have them marry into their household to add their magical talent to their assets, and hopefully to their bloodline too. Between her relatives and the parties she was forced to attend to, she never had the time to visit Lith, only hearing from him with the amulet. Whoever said, "away from the eyes, away from the heart," was a jackass, right, Lucky? Floria said, throwing a chicken leg to the big mastiff, that barked enthusiastically. As long as she fed him roasted chicken, Lucky agreed with everything she said. "I miss so much our walks, our talks, the cuddling and everything else. I can't invite him here, or my grandparents would eat him alive, nor can I go to Lucia. They have no warp steps, and I have never been there. Going back and forth would take too much time, damn it." A chicken wing earned her another woof of compassion. Quilla and Freya were faring much worse than their adoptive sister. During the last 2 months, Quilla had been unable to practice magic even once. Journey gave Quilla her undivided attention, trying to cram in a single winter the education the other girls had received since birth. Quilla had to learn the proper etiquette during conversation and the meals, how to ride a horse, play at least one instrument, and learn everything about the kingdom's history and current political affairs. Her talent for magic couldn't help her in any of the above, while her shy character made everything more difficult. Day after day, Quilla was forced to talk with people she didn't know and do things she didn't care about. Freya had a lot of free time. Instead, she used it to learn about her new family, spending more time with Orion and Journey. Compared to her biological mother, Journey was a much better kind of monster, giving her ample freedom about how to manage her life. Orion was the father she had always wished for, so she soon came to realize that being adopted by the Ernest couple was the best thing that had ever happened to her. Freya spent her days helping Quilla revise the various subjects daily assigned to her and training together with Floria. Outside the academy, the two had still a shallow relationship, but it was slowly improving. Freya had long feared for Floria to push her around, abusing her status of the true daughter. Yet the only thing she ever did was nag her about how bossy Journey was and how fat Lucky was getting. There were only two downsides to her current situation. The first, just like for Uriel, was being paraded as the second best student of the White Griffin at every occasion. The second one was closely related to the first, the bad rumors that came with her achievement. Being a former member of the Solivar family was a stigma she was unable to wash away. Both the old and new magical bloodlines resented Freya, spreading the vilest accusations about her. During each party, as soon as Freya turned her back, she could hear whispers about her sleeping with the professors, blackmailing them, or cheating her way to success. There was nothing she could do about those rumors. The thought that despite her presence was hurting the Erna's reputation, her new parents treated her as one of her own, only made her wish that she could cut away those filthy tongues and shove them up theirs yes. This to our household, 2 weeks after the call. That evening, one of the most important events of the season was taking place in the Marchioness house. Her Marquisate was flourishing quickly, since it now ruled over the region, hosting 2 of the only 4 remaining great academies. The Earth and Crystal Griffin academies were closed. No one knew when or if they would ever reopen. Archmage Dyrus had been awarded for his services with the lands hosting the Black Griffin, giving him control over the remaining 2. They now shared an enormous power above all the other noble households. Some said too much power. All the 4 remaining academies depended on the 2 households for funding and supplies, giving them a voice in the matter of who to admit or about the changes in the academy system. The Crown had received countless petitions about taking at least one academy away from each of them, yet none had received a response. Officially, the Crown was still considering both sides' claims. Off the record, they had already dismissed them all. The Crown had no interest to strip 2 of its most loyal subjects of a prize they had worked hard to achieve just to indulge households with a shady past and an even more shady present. The names at the bottoms of most petitions were the same on the Marchioness list. It wasn't enough to accuse them of treason, but more than enough to not listen to a word they said. That night, Marchioness Distar had gathered the most influential people of the region to celebrate the rankers in the top 20 of the White and Lightning Griffin academies, allowing the students and their parents to mingle together. Uriel and his fiancée, Libya, were having another happy evening together. You know, when our parents arranged our marriage, I couldn't help but see you Dyrus like tricksters hungry for the Finter household wealth. I would have never expected for a commoner's bloodline to become so successful. I admit I was wrong about you, Libya said as soon they got rid of Duke Kylon. I was wrong about you too, Uriel replied with the same plastered smile like hers. I always saw you Finter as thirsty beggars and desperate need to get a bit of magic in their bloodline. I knew all along that your family has given birth to more dragons than mages in the past. He added viciously, I hope we could at least keep things civil between us, but as I said, I was wrong. Chapter 262. Quite an attitude for someone that almost got outshined by a filthy traitor and a dirty, poor commoner. Libya clicked her tongue in disgust. The traitor and the commoner, as you call them, are 1,000 times better than you. I wish my friend Lith was here. He is great at dealing with monsters, something I am still lacking at. Libya was about to reply in kind, when suddenly the whole room turned dark and empty. She turned around just in time to see a shadowy figure with eyes blazing with blue mana closing into her. "My dear Uriel, I always told you to go big whenever you make a wish. Otherwise, if one of them comes true, it's more a pity than a relief." "He's right behind you, of course," Uriel said with a smirk. "You have quite an attitude for someone that ranked." "My bad, I forgot you have no rank. It's just that my mind refuses the idea that someone without an iota of magical power could be so arrogant." Normally, Lith would have ignored Libya's slander. Back at the academy, he heard much crueler words on a daily basis, yet he paid them no heed. Lith just had 3 months of peace, and his renewed bond with Solus made him calmer than ever. The reason behind his unnatural behavior was the precise instructions Martianus Distar had given him. "It's been a while since I taught a lesson to an arrogant prick. This is going to be fun," he thought. "It's better for you to watch your tongue, young miss. One day, even a dirty, poor commoner could reach a status higher than yours. Without your noble title, you are nothing more than a spoiled parlor dog. You should be aware that dumb creatures that keep barking at the wrong tree are accident-prone." Lith kept his distance, pointing his finger at her while he talked. It was an act incredibly rude towards someone of a higher social class. In any other circumstance, Libya would have lashed out at Lith for his unacceptable behavior. She wanted to, but was unable to speak. Something prevented her from even moving her eyes away from Lith's index finger. To her, it was like a sword pointed at her throat, exuding a chilling aura that was prickling at her skin like countless needles of ice. With every step that Lith took forward, Libya's stomach twisted into one knot after the other. Suddenly, she just wanted to hide behind Uriel, but he was nowhere to be seen. The whole world had disappeared, leaving her alone with a crazed beast. Contrary to Libya's perception, Uriel was right beside her. The room was perfectly lighted, and Moger kept spinning on its axis, uncaring like always. "I don't know why Lith is acting so touchy, and honestly, I don't care," Uriel thought. Her being forced to shut up for once, it's liberating. Being used to Lith's aura and having an innate powerful mana flow, Uriel was unable to perceive the pressure Lith was exerting, so he was further surprised by Libya's meek attitude. At least until he realized she wasn't meek at all. His fiancée was simply unable to breathe. Uriel recognized the all-too-familiar symptoms of mind aggression from a magical aura. Libya's forehead was beady with sweat. Her face was turning from pale white to cyanotic blue from the lack of oxygen. "Okay, that's enough." Uriel grabbed Lith's hand, interposing himself between the two to break the eye contact. Libya was now able to breathe again. She found herself back in a Martianus's dining hall. The people around them were watching at the scene with an amused expression. Realizing what had happened, she felt humiliated like it had never happened her whole life. The Finter family had never given birth to a single mage, but they were one of the most ancient noble households of the Griffin Kingdom. Even archmages treated them with respect, as long as the Finter did the same, of course. Libya wanted to yell and call for her personal guards to teach the country bumpkin a lesson. What she did was go to the closest bathroom, moving forward with furious but short strides instead. The sudden scare had almost made Libya lose control of her bowels. She had only so much time before shaming herself for life. Also, making a scene in front of so many guests would only make her look like a fool. The only thing she could accuse Lith of was being rude. He had not cast a single spell, nor left a single scratch on her. As soon as she left, Lith returned Uriel's grab, making it a handshake. If that's the woman you're going to spend the life with, there's no amount of alcohol that will make her presence bearable. You need to set boundaries, or she'll drive you insane. That, or you can kill her. Lith's wolfish smile made Uriel understand he wasn't joking at all. "I wish things were that simple." Uriel sighed. "Killing Libya would only force me to marry one of her sisters and undergo a thorough investigation. Believe it or not, she's the less annoying of the bunch. Since you already know Lady Erna's, you can imagine what does it mean having a royal constable on your tail. No, I only have 3 roads ahead of me. Accepting my fate, emancipating myself from the Dyer's household after the 5th year, or convince my father to cancel the wedding. Emancipation would mean squandering everything I have done so far and probably dooming the Dyer's household. Without an heir, if something happens to my father, our bloodline is over. Yet, canceling the wedding is even more unlikely. It would mean making us lose a lot of face. Our prestige would be destroyed. Between that and antagonizing the Finter, it would put an end to all our plans for improvement for at least 10 years. As you can see, I'm basically doomed. A long, awkward moment of silence followed before Uriel decided to move on a less depressing subject. The dinner jacket looks good on you. Unlike Uriel, Lith wasn't wearing his uniform but the New World equivalent of a black tuxedo. The white shirt was apparently made of silk, while the pants and jacket were made of a wool similar to Earth's vicuna. What Lith was actually wearing was his skinwalker armor. He had stored the real suit in the blue gemstone embedded at the base of the neck, allowing the enchanted item to mimic it to perfection. The white griffin pin was shining on the pocket above his heart. Aren't you sick of that uniform at this point? Also, you seem to have lost weight since the last time we met. Yes to both. But what can I do about it? Uriel shrugged. Since the rankings came out, my family was awarded with the lands that host the Black Griffin Academy. It means a lot more authority and prestige, but also a lot more responsibilities. Because of that, my father is forced to spend most his days granting audiences to our new retainers to sort out those to keep from those to replace. I'm helping him, of course. Being the heir, he is showing me the ropes while at the same time introducing me to my future subjects. Chapter 263. Why are you so stressed, then? Isn't this your lifelong dream? Libya excluded, obviously. Lith could understand her being a pain in the ass, but not like that. Uriel seemed to be well fed and rested, yet had lost at least 5 kilos. Because besides being paraded like an exotic animal 24/7 to affirm our new status in front of the crown and our neighbors, which is already quite stressing, there have been 5 attempts on my life already. Do you see that woman? Uriel tilted his head towards a gorgeous redhead. She was wearing an emerald dress that emphasized her fair white skin and green eyes. The red scarf on her neck matched her hair, partially covering her shoulders and arms that the dress left exposed. Do you mean that battle mage? Lith replied while his eyes indulged on her neckline a second longer than it was polite. Yeah, she is my new personal assistant/mistress/bodyguard. I can't go anywhere without her following me around. Lucky bastard. Lith's voice had a tinge of envy. Wow, that's new from you. Uriel was surprised. He had always considered Lith made of stone, or at least the next best thing. By the way, how do you know she is a battle mage? Ever since my earlier little stunt, she hasn't taken her eyes off me. Hence, she knows what happened, but it's not afraid of me, just wary. That makes her a mage. She bears no sword, has too many muscles to be a civilian, but too little to be just a hired muscle. If she was a mage knight, she would stick closer to you. The only explanation left is for her being a battle mage. Lith explained his Holmes-like reasoning with a smug expression. You really are shameless. Solus made a mental retching sound. You didn't notice anything outside her 3 sizes. While I understood she is a mage from her bright blue mana core and her specialization from the enchanted items she wears. They come straight out of Wainmeyer's catalog. Uriel's dad spares no expenses. Well, you know how they say. Hindsight is correct 100% of times. Also, it's not like I can tell him about your existence. Since I need a cover story, I can as well use it to appear as a keen observer. Brilliant deduction. Uriel nodded in approval. You were lucky none of the girls was here. Otherwise, Floria would never let you hear the end of it, if she learns about your previous remark. The Urnas are here, too. I heard they didn't have the time to attend. They are fashionably late, as usual. Uriel shrugged. From what my father said to me, the Marchioness insisted for their presence. Just like she did for yours, I guess. I didn't expect to see you at all. You know, being the party full of stuck-up nobles while your parents are. Uriel didn't complete the sentence, but there was no need to. Indeed, she did. I came here with Count Lark as my chaperone. Lith pointed at the jovial noble talking with other mages, losing his monocle from time to time due to the excitement. Lark didn't care about hanging with influential nobles as much as sharing his passion about magic. Speak of the phoenix, and there is the smoke. Freya, Nice to see you. Freya gave them a small curtsy, to which they replied with a bow. She was wearing a gold-embroidered cream-colored evening dress that covered her up to the shoulder. Her hair was arranged into an elaborate updo, with several tresses knot together that left her neck exposed, emphasizing the leaves-shaped parure composed of golden necklace and earrings with black diamonds that complemented her dark eyes and hair. She also wore evening gloves, giving her outfit a maiden look, being the one that left the most to imagination compared to the other noble dames. Nice to see you guys, too. Thank the gods you didn't get any taller, she said with a smug expression while looking Lith in the eyes thanks to the high heels. I'm still taller than you, and I've got plenty of time to grow. He shrugged. Nice dress. It looks lovely on you. Thanks, but I actually don't like it. She snorted. I was just tired of men complimenting in my breast for their rank at the academy, while other girls called me a SLT behind my back. At first, I tried to ignore them, but after a while they really got under my skin. Seriously? Again with those rumors? Lith raised an eyebrow in disbelief. Yeah, beware that you got it even worse than me. Some say that you slept with both the male and female professors, others that you are the Marchioness boy toy. Some even that you are the forbidden love child between her and Linjos. Lith laughed heartily at the thought. Let them talk, I don't care. Where are the others? Do you mean Floria? She winked at him. Don't worry, she is eager to see you too. We just split up to search for you guys more quickly. Their chatter was interrupted when they saw Marchioness Distar coming towards them, followed by 3 youths. The 4 ladies all wore magnificent evening dresses, embroidered with small gemstones complementing either their eyes, hair, or skin. Ladies, allow me to introduce to you our guests of honor from the White Griffin Academy. They are Uriel Dyrus, Freya Ernaz, and Lith of Lucia. Each one of them politely greeted the newcomers as soon the Marchioness called their name. These 3 girls are the top rankers from the Lightning Griffin: Lusa Urger, Kyla Dorner, and Vala Radhar. The girls gave them a small curtsy, having a hard time hiding their surprise. Usually, the first ranker was also the one awarded with the Academy's crown jewel, the colored griffin pin. Lusa Urger wore them both side by side, the golden griffin and the topaz griffin pins. That was also the reason why Uriel was the only one forced to wear his uniform. Otherwise, he would be forced to specify countless times which academy he was from. The second anomaly was the trio composition. Onmoger women were naturally more talented for magic, to the point that even inside the academies the males/females ratio was 4-6. For both the pin-awarded rankers, to be men was something rarer than finding a unicorn on the doorstep. The 3 girls from the Lightning Griffin had prepared some nasty remarks for their opponents, but suddenly they were at a loss for words. The Marchioness didn't seem intentioned to leave the 6 of them. To make things worse, Uriel was way more handsome than they had pictured him, making hard for them being mean to him. Lith was a good head taller than the Lightning Griffin's golden trio, and was looking at them with the same cold gaze an undertaker would use while preparing the boxes for his latest clients. Freya would have been the easiest mark, if not for the considerable amount of killing intent she was emitting. The muscles on her arms had been finely chiseled by daily training, while her soft smile was warning them that Freya had no problem breaking a jaw or 2 by accident. Chapter 264. You are the rising stars of your respective academies, and the reason why I organized this gala. Your achievements bring great prestige to the Distar Marquette, so I'm going to personally introduce you to my guests. You should use this opportunity to distinguish yourself and show your value to the kingdom. The Marchioness took a few steps back, throwing a short but meaningful look at Lith. She turned around, rubbing her throat, and activating a first magic air spell. May I have your attention, please? Her magically enhanced voice resounded through the ballroom, making all the heads turn and conversation stop. Tonight, we have assembled to celebrate the new year, to remember all the hardships we have endured. 2 academies are temporarily lost. Balkier has once again put the Griffin Kingdom on its knees. Yet we survived. Our future may seem grim, but our present is worthy of celebration. I'll introduce to you, one by one, the brightest minds of this generation. I'd like to ask them to show us a little bit of their talent, so that they can demonstrate the progress they have made during the past year and make this evening more enjoyable. There are a lot of rumors about the rankings being unfair. Martianus Distar looked at all the 6 youths, but indulged on Freya for a second longer than the others. Magic, however, doesn't allow one to bluff. Either you can do something or you can't. There is no faking talent. What is required from you is to perform at your best by using only first magic. For security reasons, Tier 1 magic and above are sealed by the mansion's protective arrays, and so are all the magical items that are not defensive in nature. Lith was surprised by the announcement. He hadn't encountered such a powerful formation since during the plague, when he was under the effects of the small world artifact. Solus activated her mana sense, scouting their surroundings. There are a lot of arrays around us, but no small world. She thought, this is not something I would have expected from a medium importance noble like the Martianus. I thought only the royals had access to magical formations this strong. Let's see how they fare against true magic. Lith silently waved a Tier 1 spell in his mind, connecting his mana with the world energy surrounding him. The idea was to perform something simple and unnoticeable, raising the temperature of the room by a few degrees. Everything went fine until he mixed the mana with the fire element. As soon as the energy started to build, the arrays around him activated. They weren't actually capable of preventing him from casting a spell, only to disrupt the execution by causing fluctuations in the mana in the room. That's why the security is so lax. Intruders and guests are both stripped of all their powers. The arrays can definitely stop a fake mage, but not a true one. I could continue if I wanted. I only need to adapt my flow according to the fluctuations, something that a fake mage's fixed pattern is incapable of doing. What about our dimensional pocket? Lith was reassured by his findings. He had walked into the arrays without even noticing them. He had gravely underestimated a noble household's resources. I think we can open it, but it's going to take some time and effort. In our case, rather than block our magic, these arrays make casting any spell much harder and mana expensive. Solus replied. Lithmind nodded to her words, checking if both spirit magic and fusion magic still worked. Everything went without a hitch. No matter how much energy he conjured, the arrays remained inactive. Let's start from the first rankers. The Martianus continued. Uriel Dyrus, the White Hand from the White Griffin Academy. Uriel the what now? Lith whispered in Freya's ear. It's his custom title. High rankers often receive one or more nicknames from their professors in the fields they are more talented in. She explained. I never heard anyone calling him like that, though. And probably you never will. You probably wouldn't have one if not for Linjos's you-know-what. Her voice was barely audible, even with his heightened senses. Lith was able to notice Uriel being embarrassed by the pompous title and the deafening applause that followed. Poor Uriel. Solus's voice was full of compassion. Not only he gets constantly reminded of his fake achievement, but he also got the short end of the stick by going first. Hope he doesn't get stage fright. Right now he has only 2 choices, either to keep drowning himself in self-pity or do his best to turn the lie into truth. I hope he'll choose the second one. Lith replied. Before their telepathic talk could finish, Uriel was already moving. Stage fright was something he had overcome years ago. As the heir of the Dyrus household, Uriel had followed his father to all the most important social events ever since he was little, often opening his speeches in the role of valet. After being paraded around the whole kingdom for the last 2 months, bragging was second nature to him. Uriel slowly spun around, waving his hands in the air while collecting small wisps of fire from every candle that met his eyes. The ballroom was mostly lighted with magical crystals, but there would always be other sources of light at a banquet to give the room warmth. No matter how brilliant it was, magic-generated light had something cold about it, especially to non-mages. The wisps danced around Uriel, forming an ethereal river, until he widened his arms, making them spread around. The wisps rose a few meters above the guests' heads, taking advantage of the high ceiling. Then, each wisp grew to the size of a football, assuming the shape of a griffin that shrieked its challenge to its fiery companions. Each wisp griffin was of a different color, ranging from red to green. Handling so many griffins with only first magic put a cap on the temperatures the conjured flames could reach. The whole room gasped in amazement while the pseudo-creatures charged at each other like they were fighting to the death. Then, Uriel made them fly out from an open window, sending them as high as he could before he lost control. When it happened, they exploded, forming multicolored fireworks. His performance caused a spontaneous applause that continued until the Marchioness announced the next student. Lusa Urger, the mistress of the storm. The Lightning Griffin first ranker was in quite a pinch. She had not prepared anything. The show wasn't planned. Lusa didn't want to be outshined, but fire was the flashiest element and it had already been used. So, she resorted to water magic, collecting a few drops from the drinks of those presents to form a multicolored sphere of liquid that created multiple rainbows across the room before turning it into an ice dragon that flew out of the window before exploding into a huge rainbow. The crowd applauded, but after Uriel's performance, Luce's was lackluster. Freya Ernas, the master of space. When her name was called, Freya went to the center stage. She used light and darkness magic to recreate the celestial sphere, giving to those present the illusion the ceiling had disappeared. Chapter 265. Whole constellations moved at unison like each second was an hour, until a fake sun appeared on the horizon, making the right return in the room. The spectators congratulated her with a thunderous applause. Kyla Dorner, the battle goddess. Lith was already bored when he felt someone tugging at his arm. He turned around to discover it was Floria. He was about to whisper a greeting, but she was faster. "Kiss me like you miss me." Aside from Freya that was standing right next to them, everyone was so caught in the performance that no one noticed the deep, passionate kiss she gave him. Lith had the impression she had just sucked the air out of his lungs and maybe even tasted his tonsil. Floria only let him go when the applause marking the end of the performance resounded. Lith could finally take a proper look at her. She wore a silk satin red evening dress and white evening gloves, emphasizing her olive-colored skin due to the prolonged exposure to the sun. It was skin-tight, with a neckline that somehow exerted a push-up effect. Her hair had grown even longer, allowing Floria to braid them into tresses that were knotted, twisted, and tied back in an intricate headpiece, complete with pearls and fabrics. Walking like a man, hitting like a hammer, Lith couldn't avoid remembering an old Earth song. Well, she definitely got the look. Solus giggled. Before they could exchange a single word, Lith got called to the center stage. Lith of Lusha, the eye of God and maker of wonders. The whole room gasped in surprise, Lith included. No one else had received 2 titles, and him being the 3rd ranker made it even more amazing. Not even most second rankers would receive a title. It seems that Vaster wasn't kidding when he said that the Light and Forge Mastering department were quite pissed off at Linjo's for the rankings. Usually I wouldn't like so much attention, but tonight it's different, he thought with a smirk. Thanks for your kind introduction, dear Marchioness. I hope you all realize that at this point, there isn't much I can do without boring you with a rerun of what my peers already did. So, to spice things up, I'm going to try something different, but I need an assistant. He turned around the room, pretending to be searching for the right person. You. He pointed his finger at Floria. Would you do me the honor of accompanying me in this feat? Lith extended his hand to her. Floria was dazed for a second, embarrassed by all the eyes on her, before stepping forward to take Lith's hand. Thanks. Now, just follow my lead. Lith walked toward the nearest wall, leaving some of the guests confused and most of them disappointed. Once they arrived in front of the wall, Lith didn't stop walking, stepping on it. Floria didn't understand what was happening, and neither did most of the guests. The others were either chalking on their drinks or inwardly cursing at him. Son of the Marchioness was among the latter. I asked him for a distraction and some ruckus. This is going to turn into a riot if I don't handle it properly. Do you trust me? Lith said with a smile, seeing that Floria was hesitant. In response to the question, she immediately stepped forward, discovering that her foot was now effortlessly stuck to the wall. Lith then resumed walking, accompanied by her, until they were standing upside down on the ceiling. As it was apparent ever since their first vertical step, it wasn't a flight or float spell. Otherwise, the coats of Lith's suit and Floria's gown would be falling toward the ground, making the situation quite embarrassing, especially for Floria. Her hair, dress, and jewels were perfectly normal, like she was just walking on the floor. "May we have some music?" At Lith's request, the Marchioness signaled the orchestra that started playing a minuet. The couple danced the whole song while avoiding the numerous crystal chandeliers, returning back in front of the Marchioness when the music ended. Floria was red from the excitement, but the room gave them a cold reception. No one applauded. They were just looking at them like they were monsters, even Journey and Orion. "I'm sorry you didn't like it, but I did." Lith shrugged. Their approval meant nothing to him. "For your information, that's something I like to call gravity magic," Archmage Dyrus blurted out, cutting him short. Nailed in one. Lith was surprised by how fast Uriel's dad had understood what had happened. After all, gravity magic was Lith's original creation. Or so he thought. That's impossible. One after the other, the mages present expressed their disbelief while the nobles would ask them for an explanation. "What's gravity magic, Dad?" Uriel was among them. The seventh kind of magic, something that's considered an exclusive of the ancient noble households. "I never heard anything about it. Not from you, nor while being at the academy. Is it some kind of secret art?" Uriel's curiosity was piqued. He never heard about a seventh natural element. "It's not a secret, otherwise I wouldn't know about it." Velan Dyrus shook his head. "I never spoke about it, because I don't practice it. You can find books about it in the academy's libraries, but no one will ever teach it to you. It's complicated." As soon as the details about gravity magic were being disclosed, the murmurs rose in intensity and volume, turning into chatting first and yells later. "Complicated how?" Uriel asked while Lith and Floria joined him. They were as confused as he was. Gravity magic requires to be able to cast 6 spells at once and wave them together. It also requires a great mastery of the mana control and of the principles behind the natural phenomenons. What you saw your friend using is the equivalent of first magic, yet it's already beyond the reach of most. Gravity magic is considered to be a legacy of the most ancient noble households because they are the only ones that possess the knowledge and the magical legacy to teach it. "Why did you never learn it? Aren't you an archmage?" Lith nodded, agreeing with Uriel's question. He was quite disappointed in learning he had just reinvented the wheel. Again, yet this time it seemed to be quite a fancy wheel. "Because it's useless. Even Tier 1 gravity spells are too complex. They require such fine control over the mana and the hand signs that their difficulty goes beyond that of Tier 5 spells. The results do not justify the effort." Lith understood Velan's point, but it was an issue for him. Lith never had to struggle with magic words or signs. True magic was all a matter of manipulating the mana flow according to one's will. Gravity magic was indeed difficult. He was just scratching the top of the barrel, and it required Lith's full focus just to reverse the gravity on 2 people. Yet moving to higher levels of gravity magic was far from impossible for him. It's not just a matter of effort. It's a matter of pride. Archmage Ejar, Luce's mother, roared. Gravity magic, it's the living proof of all true magical bloodlines. She looked Velar in the eyes, clicking her tongue in disgust. Chapter 266. That's why I practice it, and I'm teaching it to my daughter. Archmage Ejar echoed through the ballroom. Because the Ejar are true mages, not 2-bit pretenders like you. Grassroots mages shouldn't even be in the same room as us. A lot of indignant voices cursed at her. Archmage Dyrus's eyes shone with a menacing emerald light. "I dare you to say that again." Velan snarled, his face only a few centimeters away from his peers. "I did my part, that's for sure." Lith thought with a grin on his face. "The Marchioness asked me for some ruckus. I'd say dinner is served, even though only Isaac Newton knows why." "What in the God's name are you grinning for, kid?" Archmage Ejar ignored Velan's threat, pointing her finger against the uncaring youth. "How did you do it? Who taught you about gravity magic? Pray that I like your answers, otherwise." "Otherwise what?" Lith slapped away the hand in front of his face, making the Archmage's eyes almost pop out of their sockets in anger. "I'm a student at the White Griffin. first in the light department and an asset to the kingdom. I'm Marchioness de Star's honored guest, attending this gala on request of the crown. What authority do you represent, exactly? Outside your own foolishness, of course. Indeed, Archmage Ejar's face was still in the process of losing its color, realizing the amazing number of blunders in a row she had just made when the Marchioness's voice resounded next to her ear. You are in my house, while I represent the crown, and you dare to offend your peers and threaten my guests. No. Ejar stuttered, but luckily for her, Marchioness de Star's question was merely rhetorical. Her rudeness is unforgivable, but she made a good point. Where did you learn such magic, Lith? The Marchioness wanted answers too, but she asked them rather than making demands. Her tone gentle and polite. I learned it as a self-taught. He replied with a shrug, making new and ancient households gasp in surprise. It's not that hard. Lith couldn't understand the reason behind their disbelief. I learned how to create pocket dimensions at the Forge Mastering lessons and how to bend space with dimensional magic. They're just two extreme applications of gravity. I only had to combine what I learned from both subjects and then use it to manipulate gravity around objects rather than on the space itself. As a Marchioness had predicted earlier, Lith's actions triggered a hornet's nest. New households were using him together with Archmage Ejar's lack of manners as proof that magic was fair, while the ancient households were not. All mages deserved respect according to their talent and disposition, not based on the family they were born in. The ancient households claimed it was a scam, blaming the Marchioness for having shared their secrets with a commoner mongrel. Lith decided it was time to get to safety. Nobles' quarrels didn't interest him. He only did what he had been paid for. Where do you think you were going? Lith felt his center of gravity shift. Suddenly he was on the verge of falling horizontally. Archmage Ejar was using gravity magic to pull him back in the middle of the conflict. First, he had to crouch, gripping at the floor with one hand to prevent the fall. Then, Lith used his own gravity magic to cancel the pull. The opponent had a stronger core, but for her first magic was just a hobby. For Lith, it was a life's work. Kneel! He sent a powerful wave crashing on Ejar's body, which tripled her weight in a split second. He even added a sprinkle of spirit magic, just to be safe. Archmage Ejar fell on her knees. She was forced to use her hands to avoid her forehead crashing against the ground. I warned you. No one disrespects me or my guests in my house. The Marchioness clapped her hands, unleashing the full power of the arrays against the unruly noble. Archmage Ejar's body writhed for a second before falling limp on the ground. Once focused on a target, the arrays were capable of disrupting even first magic. They could also paralyze any threat, living or undead, by binding every fiber of their target. The brief magical battle made the room turn silent, but only for a second. One side of the room called Ejar a hero, the other one a traitor. The quarrel resumed without the use of magic, but louder than before. Floria and Uriel helped Lith to stand up, bringing him to safety. That went well, he said with a sarcastic expression. You sure know how to liven up a party. Floria clicked her tongue at the raging crowd behind them. Dancing on the ceiling with Lith, surrounded by the lights like they were alone in the world, had been truly romantic. What followed, not so much. Raising your hand against an archmage. Are you insane? Uriel was still as pale as a ghost. What was I supposed to do? Let her beat me up and beg for mercy? She was out of her mind. I prefer to apologize later rather than be so polite to let someone kill me for sport. Lith scoffed at his companion. With a short sprint, they reached the safest spot in the room, the one where the Urnas and other nobles were spectating at the unfolding events from a safe distance. Despite being members of ancient noble households, those gathered there had no place in the conflict. They supported the young magical bloodline's claim for fairness. They chose to stand on the fence because in the heat of the moment their allies would lash at them, mistaking them for the enemy, while their noble peers would brand them as traitors. Their intervention would only end up making the two factions gang up on them, so they decided to wait for the lord of the house to put an end to that mess. Why is it taking her so long? While her peers were still discussing Litha's performance or Ejar's unspeakable act of aggression towards an honored guest of the crown, Journey's mind was spinning at top gear. Now that you mention it, it's indeed odd. Orion whispered back. Between the arrays and her personal guards, this mess shouldn't have even started. Maybe she doesn't want to raise her hand against other nobles. Violence could escalate things politically. Maybe, but she doesn't strike me as a calm guiding hand. Distar had no qualms subduing Ejar. What's worse than attacking a noble that's also an archmage? Their private conversation was interrupted when they saw the youths approaching, mostly because a young woman stepped right in front of them, welcoming the White Griffin students with a flawless curtsy. Yours was a striking performance, Mage Lith. She didn't manage to say it with a straight face. She giggled cheerfully while hiding. You managed to turn a hundreds-years-old tradition into a tavern fight in less than 10 minutes. That's completely unprecedented and truly worthy of my savior. She was about 17 years old, with silky blonde hair down, looking like a golden waterfall that almost reached the floor. Chapter 267. The young woman wore a white evening dress that left her shoulders and arms exposed. It was embroidered with sapphires that emphasized her sky-blue eyes. She had a lively face and a bright smile. Her demeanor left Lith quite puzzled. "I'm sorry, do I know you?" The young woman looked somehow familiar, but no matter how much he focused, Lith couldn't recognize her. The only thing he knew was that she was quite well endowed. Her beauty was easily on Freya's level. "Did you really forget about me?" she said with a playful gaze. "Even though you're the only man that ever saw me naked?" she whispered while blushing on cue, hiding her face with a fan made of what looked like golden peacock's feathers. "She's the Marchioness' daughter. Don't you see the resemblance?" Solus pointed out. "Besides, it's true that so far most of the girls on Mogar are on the thin side, but for example, Tista is much more. First, gross. Second, Tista isn't a girl, she is my sister. Don't use her as a standard, thanks." Lith cut her short. His companions were all taken aback by the girl's last remark, and he had the gall to call me a lucky bastard. Uriel inwardly cursed and congratulated at his friend at the same time. "I am sorry, milady. I can't remember all of my patients, no matter how pleasing to the eye they are. I had too many." Lith gave her a small bow, pretending to not know who she was. Floria felt reassured by the patient part and threatened by everything else. Lith wasn't the kind of man to make false compliments. "How do you know I was your patient then?" She closed her fan, her expression inquisitive in a way that Journey didn't like at all. "You call me your savior. I'm no warrior, just a healer." While Lith played Sherlock Holmes again, his companions had a hard time repressing a burst of laughter at the blatant lie. "That and the other part," he whispered, "made everything clear. Brilliant." She clapped her hands while smiling nonstop. A strong character, a bright mind, and an eye that doesn't stop just at a pretty dress. These are all traits that I appreciate in a man. Also, you are right, we were never properly introduced. I'm Brynja Distar, first daughter of Marchioness Miriam Distar and heir to my household. Her choice of words was formal. Brynja even accompanied her self-introduction with a second curtsy, much deeper than the first. It was quite uncommon for the host to show so much respect to a guest met for the first time. That and her previous words worried Lith as much as they did Foria and Journey. Being wooed by the daughter of his patron sounded like a massive pain in the AS. "Seems my big sister has a rival now." Freya inwardly smiled. That evening was getting more interesting by the second. "I'm Lith of Lusha. If next year I graduate, I will still be just a mage." He gave her a deep bow while using modest words to belittle himself. "Well, for being just a mage you proved to be resourceful and brave. You even stood your ground against a self-entitled archmage. Or was it just recklessness?" She replied without backing down from her position. "No, it wasn't." Lith shook his head. "I may be someone of humble origins, but I didn't spend my time hiding in a cave, studying magic, or fighting nonstop like a bloodthirsty beast. I learned society's rules, got admitted to one of the 6 great academies, made friends." He pointed at his companions. "And allies." Lith nodded toward the Marchioness. I just showed everyone what I accomplished after a single year of proper education. Now it's up to them to choose if they want to stand against me or support me. Either way, I'm not easily bullied because I made myself really hard to replace. No matter how big their ego is or how small-minded they are, I believe that in times of crisis, most of them would feel reassured rather than threatened by my presence. See? That's what I meant. Just a mage Lith. Brynja said with a radiant smile, while taking his arm between hers, gently pressing it against her breast. Lith was flattered, but unfazed by her behavior. Thanks, your ladyship, but I think you missed the part about me being just 13 years old and without any background. Lith tried to step away. He could feel several eyes piercing his back. How was that a problem? She giggled, holding his arm even tighter. In a few years, the age gap will become irrelevant. Whoever I'm going to marry, he will join my family, and I'm rich enough for 3 people. I may have no magical power of my own, but the Distar bloodline gave birth to several powerful mages. I can't stand those shallow nobles that only care for my wealth, nor the arrogant mages that see every non-magic user as an object. I'm tired of being considered an arm candy with annuities from those who aim for my family title. Based on what I heard about you, and on what you did tonight, you were like a breath of fresh air. I just want to get to know you better. Her points were all valid, but Lith had no interest in any kind of relationship. What the heck? First Floria and now Brynja. Women in the New World are quite assertive. Lith thought. Maybe it's because here magic gives them an edge. Solus suggested. Or maybe it's just a cultural thing they have. Unlike Earth's Middle Ages on Mogre, women have the same opportunities as men. They can pass their last name and inherit their family's fortunes. Solus had a hard time not mentioning that she also would be assertive, if only she had the means to. Despite being brief, her experience with a body, first Lith's and then hers, had filled her with hope and confidence. At the same time, Solus had become quite impatient. I wonder how many years will it take for me to get even that body made of light. She inwardly sighed in a corner of her mind, glad to have her privacy. Until then, I can only cheer for Lith from the sidelines. Distar household later that evening. After all of her guests had safely departed to their homes via the Marchioness private warp gate, she could finally sit down in the armchair in her office and relax. After the bumpy start, everything had gone as planned. She took out a communication amulet, placing it in the middle of her desk. 4 blue magic crystals appeared from the corners of the solid white oak table, opening a secure channel with Queen Silpha. I hope you bring me good news, Miriam. The Queen's stern face greeted her with a nod. Excellent news, Your Majesty. The Marchioness gave her a small bow. Chapter 268. Please, enough with honorifics and pleasantries. It's already late, and it's just the 2 of us, dear friend. As you wish, Silpha. The 2 knew each other since their time at the White Griffin Academy. It was a well-kept secret, since Miriam had attended the courses under a fake name. She wanted to avoid receiving a special treatment as the daughter of the ruler of the land. The 2 of them had both inherited their respective bloodlines' talent for magic, and that, together with the long years of friendship, had created a bond between them almost stronger than blood. After achieving the role of Lord Commander of the Queen's Corps, Miriam Distar had chosen to keep the pretense of being magicless to make her enemies underestimate her, making it hard to believe she was more than just a medium importance noble. Her only regret was that life seemed to have an odd sense of humor. Her daughter was the only member of the family born without any talent for magic. It was something that had not happened for generations. It's almost like Brynja is being punished for my deception. She would think from time to time, before shrugging off all that superstitious horsish tea. Inheriting magic was a matter of blood and luck. Having mages in the family made it easier for descendants to be more attuned with the world energy, but it wasn't an ironclad rule. That was the reason why, despite having many heirs, sometimes the ancient noble households bore no mages, even for decades. So how was your evening? Silpha asked. Marchioness Distar told her everything, putting emphasis on Lith revealing the ability to use gravity magic and the discord that followed. Amazing. That young man has a talent for angering people. The most fearsome aspect of his character is that Lith is aware of who and when to provoke. He causes almost more troubles than he solves. Silpha laughed when Miriam told her about Lith forcing Archmage Ejar to kneel in public. It sure humbled her, without causing any physical harm. Miriam nodded. I managed to turn the following quarrel into a debate, forcing the two parties to find common ground. I can assure you that most of the guests left on better terms than when they arrived. That's the advantage of knowing when and where conflict is about to happen. Silpha grinned. The more hot-headed people get, the easier is to manipulate their reasoning. I'm not concerned by such small stuff, though. Tell me about your plan. As you know, I made sure that all those who knew about Linjos's anti-Balkir protocol learned about the existence of the list and that I am about to decipher it. I assumed that whoever is the traitor would try to learn about it as well. So, I orchestrated the gala to give them an opportunity to enter my house. The celebration of the top rankers was the perfect excuse to request for an invitation. As I expected, many of our enemies took part in the banquet. Even with so many people, they couldn't roam free, so I asked Mage Lith to cause a ruckus. He is notoriously unaligned. No one outside the three of us knows of my special relationship with him. No one suspects everything was staged. Good. Does he know about the plan? Silpha asked. No, he didn't even ask for an explanation. Only to strengthen the defense of his family, more money, and materials for his research. He said, and I quote, "We already have a target on our backs. Making it bigger changes nothing. As long as you pay me, I'll get the job done." Cynic and expensive for someone so young. Silpha raised an eyebrow in disbelief. If he was some idealist fool, I wouldn't have trusted him. As for the price, if you pay peanuts, you get monkeys. I consider it an investment. If he sees us as the last line of defense in front of his family, he'll never turn into another Balkir. What about the list? Silpha was getting impatient. My safe was successfully opened and the list copied. Miriam said with a wide smile. Great. What was written into it? It wasn't the real list. It was a doctored copy written in the same code, containing only the names of our prime suspects. This way, it will appear like one of their accomplices has sold them or at least is planning to cut a deal with us. Now we only need to wait and see who reacts. Who leaked the information about the list? Silpha could almost taste their blood. Balfas. He is Linjos's personal assistant. He was the one that had access to the information about the safe. The reports Miriam had provided for the suspects to read were all identical except for one detail. The location of the list. The spy had revealed their source simply by looking in a specific place rather than another. May the gods burn him. I was the one that assigned him to Linjos. How in the great mother's name did he pass all the background checks until now? Someone in my inner circle is involved, or, even worse, is an idiot. Either way, some heads are going to roll for this. The queen could almost feel the earth crumble beneath her feet. She had hoped the culprit was someone from the ancient noble households, to gain leverage against them in the recent power struggle. Having been chosen by the court, Balfas was a political knife pointed at her throat instead. That also explains how they achieved capillary control of the kitchen staff, poisoning students and professors exactly at the right moment. Indeed, Miriam touched the blue gemstone on the communication amulet, sharing the latest reports with the queen. I had Constable Ernez checking his finances. Thanks to her cooperating with Velar Dyrus, we discovered Balfas has been receiving money from a shell company that could be linked to the runaway Archmage Luckhart. How long it's been going on? Just hearing Luckhart's name gave Silpha heartburn. Before the academic year even started. The odd thing is that even after Luckhart's disappearance, the payments haven't stopped. So, the players have changed, but is the game still the same? The queen pondered out loud. Guess we'll find out soon. I'm not going to have him arrested. Getting a small fish can only get us so far. We'll use him to get to the top of the command chain. The rest of the winter passed quietly. After the gala at the Marchioness Manor, Journey allowed Floria to go to Litha's house, allowing them to spend his birthday together. Orion kept his word, gifting Lith the Gatekeeper sword. Lith was really happy about it, but there was not enough time left to perform any more experiments. He could only keep studying the interactions between the mana crystals and the pseudo-cores. The armor and the weapon had different effects, allowing him to further his understanding about how to shape a pseudo-core with true magic to give it specific properties. Lith and Solus could almost see a pattern, but they needed more data. In the blink of an eye, it was already time to go back to the academy for the last year. Chapter 269. Lith spent the last days preparing Tista's homework during his absence and studying once again Lacra Silverwing's book, The Basics of Magic. Archmage Dyrus's words had inspired him, making Lith suspect that maybe there was something he had overlooked for all those years. If Solus was right about Lacra being an awakened Magus of the past, then her book could contain part of her legacy or at least point him to its location. After all, everything she explains about first magic in her book can also be applied to true magic. I learned every word of the book, but I think I failed to comprehend its full purpose until now. As Uriel's dad said, gravity magic is an obscure subject because of its difficulty, but the same can be said about Silverwing's hexagram. What if there are both legacies left from past magi about true magic? Back when I first learned how to perform the hexagram, I had no idea arrays existed. Now, the more I look at it, the more I'm certain it's not just a parlor trick to impress the Academy's old fogies. If I'm right, it's not only the first true magic array I learned, but it's also part of the legacy of one of the most powerful mages in the history of the Griffin Kingdom. Lith's experiments lead him to discover that he could enlarge and empower the hexagram at will. There were two major difficulties in the process, though. The first was that the bigger the array grew, the harder it was to keep all the 6 elements in perfect balance. To achieve stability, the spell required for each element to receive exactly the same amount of mana and for them to have their energies flow as one. The second was that he had no idea what it was supposed to do. Being a pessimist by nature, Lith suspected it could also just be an elaborate prank from a long-dead magician. If Lacra was really dead, of course. According to Kala's words, she may still be alive. So either I find her and ask Lacra an explanation, or I need to bang my head until I crack open this mystery. At his arrival at the academy, Lith was in for a surprise. The 5th floor of the White Griffin Academy was almost identical to the 4th one. The only major changes were that his new room was in a different position and it was much bigger than the previous one. It was also equipped with a forge mastering laboratory and a healer's office. 5th-year students were fewer in numbers compared to their juniors. In a good year, they would be around 150. Because of the recent events between those who died during the attack and the ones that had failed due to the anti-mana toxin, there were less than 100 students attending the 5th year. It left a lot of free space, granting those who had made it much more liberties. Each room was customized for their needs, so that a healer could receive patients from outside the academy or a mage knight practice their swordsmanship. Having only one specialization, Floria's apartment was entirely dedicated to sword practice. It had a soundproof room complete with golems as training dummies. Thanks to their magical nature, they were made of materials which density was identical to the human body. They could also be programmed to assume different shapes and sizes, mimicking all the creatures that our mage knight course would cover. The golems were also equipped with a sort of artificial intelligence. It allowed them to retaliate to the students' attacks by following the most common combat patterns of the various creatures the golem replicated. The students were allowed to personalize their training dummies' AI to further increase the difficulty level. The first thing Floria did was to input her own style to practice against herself and find the flaws in her execution. It's the first time I'm actually happy to have only one specialization, Floria said, while showing Lith her personal training facility. How so? He noticed that the living space hadn't improved much. Once again, the habitations were poorly furnished. There was just enough to live and practice properly. Everything else was on the student. Aside from the forge mastering lab and the medical practice, Lith's room had only a bed, a wardrobe, a work desk, and a few bookshelves as furniture. He would never waste money to embellish a place he used only to sleep, especially since he would live there only for a year. Floria, on the other hand, was more carefree. Her room had already a second wardrobe full of clothes. Soft carpets covered the whole floor, allowing her to walk barefoot, even during the cold winter mornings. It was the only commodity Lith almost envied. Almost. The skinwalker armor was capable to reproduce not only clothes, but also shoes. He only had to will for it, and the armor would reshape itself from the pajama's form to the uniform, covering his feet. The transition would only last for a split second. The enchanted clothes turned into a semi-liquid state, running over Lith's body while changing its color and composition on a molecular level. It's worth every single point I spent on it. Lith thought every time he used the armor's properties. Unlike Lith's desk, which was always empty unless he was studying a particularly difficult subject, Floria's was decorated with egg-shaped nacre ornaments on small pedestals. They were arranged in a semi-circular form. She had even a couple on her nightstand. She had never allowed him inside her own bedroom, except when the group gathered to study together. Even then, he had never seen them before. Clearly, she hid them before their arrival. Because unlike Freya's, my training room allows me to spar with multiple golems at the same time. It's also big enough to accommodate 2 people. It means Freya and I can work out together, or I can simply train you a bit with the sword. She replied, "Good idea. The only problem is if we'll have enough time for that." He sighed. "Well, last year was different. Now if we finish late, you can always sleep here." Floria swept her hair, blushing a little. "What are these things?" Lith changed the topic. It wasn't like Floria to make such an odd and rushed offer. After he had almost died, their relationship had slowed down quite a bit. Too many things had happened too fast. His constant mood swings had contributed to making things worse. "Do you really have never seen a—" Floria almost chalked on the rest of the phrase. The most shocking thing about visiting Lith's house had been noticing how his room was as big as one of her closets. He was always so aloof to luxury that she often forgot about his humble origins. A what? Floria touched the closest egg. The upper part of the magical item opened, projecting a hologram the size of a photograph. It was completed with sounds and colors, depicting a younger Orion while he was reading a story to Floria when she was a little girl. It was a short clip played in a loop. Chapter 270. A Rememberer. Another touch from Floria made the egg close and the hologram disappear. Then, Lith watched one showing Floria playing with Lucky when the Mastiff was still a puppy, both covered in mud from head to toes. Another was about Journey, teaching her the basics of self-defense. It's how mages store their precious moments. Why did you never show them to me before? Lith's doubts were turning into a suspicion. Because those are my private moments. Floria fiddled with her hair while she was staring at the ground, incapable of looking him in the eye out of embarrassment. I didn't share them even with my sisters. Okay, let's cut to the chase. Lith closed the Rememberer, resisting the temptation to pry further in her life. Are you jealous? What? Why do you say that? Floria's flinching like that was a big tell. Well, whenever you called me after the gala, you seemed nervous. You have always liked to keep some boundaries, to go slow and steady. Yet now you're offering me to sleep here and sharing all this stuff. Sounds desperate. She completed the phrase for him. No, I was going to say, out of character. Oh, Floria blushed up to her ears. She wished for the ground to swallow her whole, but the carpet remained still. She walked to her bed, sitting on it before answering with a sad voice. Yes, I'm jealous. I don't think I can compete with the Marchioness daughter. Floria's fears had gone through the roof when Journey had pressed her to visit him during the last days of winter, instead of nagging her about her studies as usual. She's better than me under every aspect. She's very beautiful, moves and speaks like a lady. I'm just a clumsy giantess compared to her. Her eyes fell on her chest area, closing the speech with an unspoken comparison. Since when it's a challenge? Lith scoffed. Do you think I have a little book where I assign all the girls I know points or something? That I score them according to some standards? How shallow do you think I am? Wait, did you say all the girls? As in there's more? Floria was dumbfounded. Of course there are. Ever since the rankings came out, all the girls of marrying age of my village have been parading in front of me every time I left my house. I keep getting invitations from small and medium importance nobles of the Lustria County. Most of them I didn't even know they existed. To be honest, I expect to receive the same attention from our female schoolmates Uriel did last year, if not even worse. Because now he is publicly engaged, while I am just an ignorant fool. I expect them to think of me as a limitless letter of credit. I'm not stupid or arrogant enough to believe I've suddenly turned into a beautiful swan. They're all just gold diggers. Lith sat on the bed beside her. Brynja is not different from them. Even after I saved her life, she never considered me nothing more than a brat with a glare. Otherwise, she wouldn't have waited for so long before making a move. She probably heard about me from her mother and got curious. You're the only person I met since I joined the academy that looked at me as a person instead of an asset. Even before we started dating, you sought my company and advice. You have shared with me your everyday problems, the quarrels with your mother, and even your dreams for the future. Lith swept the hair that was covering Floria's face before starting to caress her cheek. I wouldn't have ever accepted to go out with you otherwise. Not even if you were the most beautiful girl in the world. Are you saying I am not? Floria had suddenly found her spunk back, hitting him with a cushion. Your words, not mine, remember? The mood while they walked toward the fifth-year lecture hall was completely different from before. Floria hummed the whole time, without forcing herself to be clingy or flirty. Not even when several girls looked at him like they saw Liv for the first time, giggling and trying to strike up a conversation with him managed to ruin her high spirits. Especially because he dismissed them every time with a growl. Lith had no time to waste in pleasantries and hated leeches ever since his time on Earth. He still vividly remembered all those that thought him being parentless was cool, who had attempted to make him waste his hard-earned money for their own gain. The lecture hall was identical to the fourth-year one, but even with all the students attending the first compulsory lesson, more than half the seats were empty. When the second gong rang, Headmaster Linjos entered the room, closely followed by Professor Farg. Welcome back, my dear students. Linjos's face was still long and unattractive, but he seemed to have turned into a different man. His gaze was hard as steel. Any trace of his previous optimistic disposition was gone. Despite the headmaster was just in his late 20s, his chestnut hair had partly turned white, complementing the shades of silver he was gifted with and giving him an even colder look. There was no joy in his voice as he spoke, only determination mixed with something that Lith recognized as slithering rage. Linjos's expression could only be described as feral. Usually the headmaster's sharp features and aquiline nose contrasted with his kind nature, while now they gave him a ferocious appearance. Since lesson time has already started, I'll go straight to the point. The past year has been a nightmare, partly because bad things happen and partly because of some of the students and their parents. A few youths stood up in outrage, but before they could even open their mouth, they were forced back to sit with a thud, unable to say a word. Linjos had used no spell or array. He only needed to let out part of his magical aura to overwhelm with his killing intent all those who had attempted to interrupt him. The power released by the headmaster was so strong that everyone present who didn't attend a combat specialization or wasn't part of Litha's group found themselves shivering in fear. So many troubles could have been avoided if some of you had the decency to leave politics outside the castle walls. So many would be still alive if not for blind pride and stupid prejudice tainting young minds like poison. Most of the perpetrators have been arrested at this point. Others I have just expelled. This is my academy. After all, I don't need to justify myself to you or anyone else for that matter. Since I believe we still have some snakes in the grass, this message is for them. The party is over. With a snap of his finger, Linjos made a guilty ballot appear in front of every student. To use it or not is up to you, but I strongly believe it's better to have it and not need it rather than to not have it and need it. Now imprint it with your mana. A few students stood up again. This time Linjos did nothing to stop them. Chapter 271. That's ridiculous, said a 15-year-old girl with blonde hair. Only weaklings need a coward's end. When she handed it to Linjos, others followed her lead. I'll take the ballot and your uniform back, young lady. Linjos extended his arm, grabbing the magical stone. Because defying a direct order from your headmaster is more than enough to get you expelled. I'm sure that, not being a weakling, You'll have no problem finding another academy taking you in. You'll only have to wait 1 year. You can't do. The girl's voice faded away when Linjo's bent down to look her in the eye while releasing his killing intent again. I can and I will. Who wants to get expelled can give me the ballot. No one stepped forward. Good, now imprint it. Everyone obeyed without hesitation. Minus 500 points to all those who disobeyed my order. But another girl managed to stutter despite the headmaster's imposing presence. We didn't say anything. That was her idea. The thought of losing right off the bat more points than acing an exam would provide was enough to make the unruly students try to push the blame on their previous leader. You have chosen your leader, hence you'll follow her in defeat as in victory. Minus 200 more points to all of you for further questioning my judgment. The class is yours, Professor Farg. Linjo's left the class while most of the rebels realized that their magical equipment had been forcefully turned off. They wouldn't be able to access to any dimensional item until they had gained back enough points. The girl and her followers were weeping because of the humiliation they had just endured when Farg sent them back to their seats. The headmaster's speech fits perfectly in today's lesson. I'm not going to teach you about fancy spells or techniques to slay monsters. Today's subject is the life outside the comfort of your homes, something that every mage sooner or later needs to face. Some of you come from small villages and know nothing about the outside world. Her gaze lingered for a second on Lith and Quilla, sitting in the front desks. Contrary to Lith's expectation, no one had a good laugh at his expenses. Linjo's was gone, but the fear still lingered in the lecture hall. Others come from noble households and know nothing at all. All of you lack the knowledge necessary for surviving in the real world. Money can't fix all of your problems, no matter how strong you are or how much influential you consider your family to be. A rogue can kill any of you just for your pocket money. If you happen to mess with a wandering wizard, they will destroy you before disappearing as fast as they arrived. To thrive, society needs order. Order breeds only from the law and the respect that all of you need to show for it. The first topic we will talk about is the difference between the Mage Association and the Mercenary Guild. In some other countries, they are known as adventurer guilds, but we of the Griffin Kingdom like to call things with their proper name. An adventurer. Farg's voice was filled with disgust. Her tongue clicked every time she spoke the word adventurer. It's nothing more than a mercenary that names themselves in a fancy way. Mercenaries can be recruited to do almost anything. Kill monsters or magical beasts, clean dungeons, retrieve stolen property. They can even act as personal bodyguards for whoever can afford their services. The only tasks they can undertake are those forbidden by law or those that are strictly prerogative of the army or the Mage Association. To accept any kind of job is necessary to join a guild. They vouch for their employees and take full responsibility for their faults. That's why a guild is entitled to receive a fair share of your income. Forget all those tales about guilds being nothing more than a board from which the brave pick up quests. Their rules are strict since their lives are on the line together with your reputation. A guild that is found guilty of hosting criminals among their ranks gets disbanded. Its guild master charged with the same crimes their underlings committed. So, if you ever want to join one, expect a full background check and a lot of personal questions. Those who fail to answer properly get blacklisted after the first attempt, losing the chance to join any other guilds as well. The Mage Association has fewer responsibilities towards its members, but has even more strict rules. The association is the link between the kingdom and the practitioners of the mystical arts. If you want to get a title, lands, anything from the Griffin Kingdom, you need to join the association first. Having attended an academy makes things easier, but getting accepted is rarely automatic, unless you have already provided a service to our country. Just like the guild, the association allows you to take on assignments, but you don't get paid with money for them, only with merits. The moment you accept your task, you are representing the Griffin Kingdom and the Crown alike. Failure is an option. No one will blame you if you are forced to retreat or decide you are not up to the task. Making a mess and giving mages a bad name, however, is not. The association is also in charge of persecuting traitorous mages and hunting down those who abuse their powers. Killing an outlaw mage is worth much more merits than saving a village or capturing bandits. We magic users are the kingdom's backbone, but also its potential worst enemy. That's why rotten apples have to be taken out in a fast and efficient manner. Those who specialize in killing their fellow mages are called spell breakers and receive the highest honors. Being part of the association is not a right, is a privilege. Its authority will shield you wherever you are. A simple call will provide you backup when in a pinch or make whole medium importance noble families disappear in a single night. It's possible to join a guild and the association both, but it's something that's frowned upon and will cripple your reputation. A mercenary can have as many masters they want to. Money can't buy their services, if not even their loyalty. A mage in the association only serves the crown and themselves. Any more is considered a crowd, making them unreliable. It's through your merits that a mage can be recognized as a great mage, an archmage, or even a magus. Those are not just empty titles. They define the depth of your loyalty to the kingdom and how much your country values you for it. Spending merits will never affect your status, only your actions will. Merits are more valuable than money for a mage, since they can be exchanged for noble titles and the annuities that come with the role, for access to the vaults of knowledge that hold the most prized magical legacies of the Griffin Kingdom. During the Code of Practice course, you will not have to study the rules and regulations of the kingdom or the association. You will live them in the roles of civil servants and probatory members of the Mage Association. Prepare to get your hands dirty. Chapter 272. Professor Farg then explained how students would spend some time outside the academy walls, similarly to what Lith had already done during the fourth year for his healer specialization. The main difference was that they wouldn't be employed only according to their specialization. The students would cover all the possible aspects of a mage's daily activities, acting as guards, firemen, healers, or simply helping the association to deal with the paperwork. The dirted hand teaches the best. Remember, only monsters thrive in chaos, using their powers to satisfy their base instincts. Soldiers, nobles, mages, even the crown itself, we are all servants of the kingdom. Achieving a higher power means much more than just the ability to yell orders. It comes with an increasing burden and responsibilities. It's only by properly carrying on your duty that your lands will develop, and so will the kingdom. Think about it before your first assignment. Class dismissed. While the other students discussed what they had just heard, Lith observed the impact Far's words had on his peers. With her charisma, she had made those of humble origins, like Quilla, feel they had a calling in life, that they had the power and the duty to protect those who couldn't defend themselves. Watching the tense expressions of the arrogant nobles who earlier had opposed Alinjos, Lith could see how they now felt insecure. They were afraid countless eyes were watching their families. After listening to Farg's speech, they imagined that it was only a matter of time before their crimes were exposed, threatening the lifestyle that they had always taken for granted. From their whispers, Lith could hear from their words that for the first time in their lives, they were afraid of the consequences of their actions. Those like Uriel and Floria were either depressed or excited instead. They had prepared for a life of duty since they were little. The Code of Practice course meant coming another step closer to their adult life. I didn't misjudge Farg at our first meeting. Lith thought. She is a natural-born leader, capable of inspiring those around her, making them strive to become better persons. The problem is that the effect she has on people is bound to be only temporary. Once they have a moment to think without the presence of a leader to guide them, they will soon fall back in their old habits and insecurities. No one becomes a better person just because of some fancy words. Neither justice becomes more efficient. I wonder how long will it take, especially for those of humble origins, to be corrupted by their newfound powers and authority once they get out of the academy. I know very well how intoxicating is the freedom to get back at those you hate without the fear of consequences. It doesn't matter if they now believe to have the moral high ground. Once they realize they are giants in a world full of ants no one cares about, they'll show their true nature. Talk is cheap, Everyone is righteous until they have the opportunity to take what their heart wants and get away with it. Solus was a bit worried about him. After seeing how the villagers of Lucia had impoverished their neighbors for their own gain, how petty were the people of Earth and Mogar both with all those who were one bit less fortunate than them, she knew he wasn't wrong. Yet she considered his vision twisted by his own baggage and distrustfulness. Solus considered herself lucky for having met Lith, and him for finding friends despite the Academy's harsh environment. They were the living proof that there were good people in the world. The following lesson was also a mandatory one, so they only had to wait for the next professor to arrive. When the gong resounded again, Professor Nailier entered the classroom. She looked even prettier than before. All that rest had done her some good. Lith felt nothing in his heart while watching her walk to the center of the hall. He was completely over his childish, unstable core-induced crush for Nailier. Good morning, dear students. It's a pleasure to see you again. Believe me, after being bedridden for months, being able to walk again feels out of this world. In case some of you were wondering about it, your professors from the 4th year have moved to the 5th floor as well. The staff follows this rotation, so those that have nurtured you can keep following your progress, making the transition to the new subjects easier since we already know your strong and weak points. Our subject this time is magic creation. As you know, every real mage must be able to create their own spells. Some of you already have some customized incantations and know how hard it is to create something from scratch. The classroom nodded in unison. Most of their personal spells were nothing more than modified versions of standard spells. At their level, creating something new implied a lot of trial and error. One of the reasons Lith managed to score so many points every trimester was that he was the only one that seemed to be able to create new spells with ease. The truth was different, though. He only developed true magic spells. The words and the hand signs he used were just gibberish. Magic creation is another of those subjects exclusive to the 6 great academies. No mage that comes from minor institutions knows about it. Even speaking about it outside the walls of an academy is considered an act of treason. What I'm going to teach you over the course of the lessons is how to more easily create new spells for each element. There's no way we can cover everything in a single trimester, so beware. Magic creation will last for the whole year. I'm going to cover only for the basics. Everything else rests on your shoulder. You'll also need what we do here for your specializations. After the first exam, you'll learn how to devise more complex and specific spells directly from the professors of the other subject you attend. Do not slack off. If you fail with me, you are bound to fail in every single course. The class sweat bullets at those words, watching at Lith with envy. Everyone considered him having an unfair advantage. Too bad they were completely off the mark. Lith was sweating even more than them. Oh, SHT. Let's hope she doesn't call me as a volunteer to explain stuff, or I'll be in hot waters. The only silver lining is that I can fake my way out. She'll surely request for simple spells that I can easily counterfeit with true magic. Don't worry, we'll start with something simple. Nailier said, taking the words out of his mind. First, you need to learn how to crawl, then how to walk, and finally how to run. Second, I'll assign each of you a different spell to create. Otherwise, one of you will do all the work, and the others will just leech it. Third, to pass this course, you'll need to share with me your final product, so that I can evaluate both your talent and effort. What's required from you is to not only devise working spells, but also the most effective ones possible. Chapter 273. Among the spells of the same tier, those that require few words and simple signs are considered much more valuable. On the other hand, long and convoluted ones will get you a C at best. Me and my big mind mouth. Lith inwardly cursed at himself. That takes faking out spells off the table. Don't be a sourpuss. Everyone else will have to work on their own, while you have me. Solus cheered him up. That's true. I'm confident that the two of us can understand almost everything about magic. Lithmai nodded. The only problem is that knowing is not doing. I hope this isn't as hard as dimensional magic. First of all, it's better if I give you the textbook. Nailier tapped her foot, making a small booklet appear on each student's desk. That's a codex. As you already know, a spell is composed of 2 parts, the magical words and hand signs. Magical words define the element the spell is based on, its shape and properties. Hand signs are necessary to regulate the mana output and adjusting its effects instead. The book I just gave you will help you with the words part. It contains all the most common prefix and suffix to alter first magic, plus the standard words that cause specific effects. Let's make an example. Infiro is the magical word for fire. Menala means 3, and tach means explosion. Hence, an Infiro Menala tach is supposed to cause 3 fire-based explosions. It's not actually that simple, but this is just a theoretical lesson. You only need to get the gist of it. Nailier shrugged lightly. Now comes the hard part, finding the correct hand signs. Unlike words, there is no recording of them. 2 people can create the same spell, yet use different words and signs. Hand signs are strongly dependent on the imagination and willpower of the mage devising the spell. While once an incantation is complete, anyone can learn it. During the creation process, some signs will feel wrong to some mages, correct to others, and lacking to many. Everything you have learned during the 4th year, even dimensional magic, it was all propedeutic to this moment. You needed to go past the boundaries of the first 3 tiers of magic to develop your mana perception. During all the exercises you have made, you have learned to control the mana flow with your will and to alter its properties. Without such solid foundations, creating even the simplest spell would require weeks, if not months, of stumbling in the dark. Let's get back to our example. In Infiro Menala tach, it's a fire spell, so I'll start using the hand sign for first fire magic. Nailier drew a small circle in the air with her index finger. Once you have a perfect pronunciation of the words, what you have to do is to focus only on your hands and your own mana flow. Say the words, draw the fire sign, then keep moving your hands. If you feel the flow continues, which will rarely happen at the first attempt, then you are on your way. If you feel it stuttering or being blocked, then you're doing something wrong. As soon as it happens, stop and go back to square one until you find the next sequence of movements. I know it may sound like just a random process, but it's not. At first, it will not seem so different from what you tried on your own in the past, but with a little practice, you'll be able to understand what's the right sequence of movements by instinct. Creating a spell from the first 3 tiers will take only a few days, while tier 4 or 5 ones may require weeks, if not months. Let's ask our resident expert. Schrodinger's cat, here we go. Lith inwardly cursed. Quilla, Professor Vaster tells me you have a wonderful diagnostic spell. Do you mind sharing with the class what tier it is, and how long did it take for you to create it? Quilla quickly straightened her slouched posture before answering the professor. Tier 3. As for the creation time, it's hard to say. The first version took me years of practice, but after joining the academy, I realized it was still lacking. She threw a short look at Lith. I keep perfecting it every time I improve or I learn something new. It's a work in progress. Previously, having so many eyes on her would have been embarrassing for Quilla, but after months of Journey's lessons, her voice was clear and steady. Do you see it, guys? Nailier gave her a small applause, followed by the rest of the classroom. Years for a tier 3. I'm not trying to belittle her talent or efforts, just highlighting how hard it was for her. What about the spell you used during the second exam? Nailier was referring to Quilla's ice spell that was very similar to Lith's checkmate spears. Tier 3 too, but it only took me a few months to make it. Quilla suddenly realized Professor Nailier's point in questioning her. Exactly. The professor nodded at her. Because I have taught you how to manipulate your mana flow, while Professor Rudd gave you the necessary practice to alter it at will. Professor, what about those like me who failed at dimensional magic? Can we also successfully create spells, or are we bound to be second-rate magicians like Professor Rudd says? Said a boy, clenching his fists hard under the desk. More than half the class had flunked it, managing to graduate only because dimensional magic was considered an optional subject. Yet it had impacted their final score, causing them to be classified as B++ magicians at best. They couldn't help but feel inferior to the upper percentile of the class. They also considered the boy very brave for having the guts to say out loud what every one of them was thinking. Good gods, that man is a monster. Professor Nailier was saddened by the lack of self-confidence she perceived in most of the students. Yes, You can create spells, maybe even faster than those who succeeded in dimensional magic. Albeit they are related, they are still two different talents. Dimensional magic requires exocasting, a very strong mana perception, and manipulation skills. Failing at it now doesn't make you lesser mages. You can keep practicing it on your own and learn it like anyone else. Most mages need years to master dimensional magic. What about you, Professor? The boy asked. How long did it take you to learn dimensional magic? Nailier bit her lower lip, struggling before answering. I learned it during my academy years. She would have liked to lie about it, to reassure them about their future. However, the records were public, making the truth easy to be discovered. Nailier had graduated first of her year, ranked as an A++ mage. So she preferred to be honest, rather than give them false hope only to lose their trust in return. Most of the class sighed in despair. Professor Rudd's voice kept echoing in their heads, making Nailier sound just like a mother that was trying to comfort her children with white lies. Chapter 274. During lunch, the members of Litha's group were hyped at the idea of Nailier's new subject. The only exception was Lith himself. I really don't care about learning how to wave new fake magic spells. It's a chore and a bore. I'm already able to cook up new spells with true magic in a matter of days. Hours if it's something I'm familiar with. He inwardly grumbled. So far, the 5th year is a letdown. Fard's course is useless too. I never did community service, nor do I plan to work my AS for free. This is just child labor. Well, this is an academy for young adults. What do you expect? Also, do I have to remind you that despite your constant pessimism, each subject we attended has either given us new ideas or helped to expand our horizons? Solus said. Thinking back at the necromancy class, Lith was forced to admit she was right. Solus wanted to be supportive, yet her greatest temptation was to tell him to stop whining and enjoy the company of his friends. The winter break had shown them how, despite their bond, noble families were as busy as Lith, if not even more. They had called each other often, but aside for the gala and Litha's birthday, the group had never managed to meet. They have only so much time together, yet Lith doesn't seem to realize how quickly a year passes. I'd like for him to make happy memories rather than waste time grumbling. She thought. I must say, so far the 5th year seems more exciting than the 4th one. Uriel was back being his old self. There were no bags under his eyes anymore. He smiled most of the time and had regained some of the lost weight. After the gala, Uriel had discovered that it was enough to pretend to call Lith to get rid of his fiancée for several hours. To make things even better, he had asked one of his private tutors to teach him how to emit killing intent. Despite being a mage, it was something he had never learned to do it. On Mogar, all living being possessed mana. Emitting it was an involuntary act, just like breathing or perspiring. Intense emotions lead to an increase in the mana emitted. That, together with an aggressive disposition, inflicted a mental pressure on those who were exposed to it, causing fear, panic, or even terror. The phenomenon was simply referred as killing intent. It wasn't necessary to be a mage to emit killing intent. As long as one had mana, they could employ it. Even animals were capable of using it to scare their prey or threaten their enemies. Being a mage made things easier, since by possessing large amounts of mana, it was possible to amplify its effects. It was the way killing intent was used by calm people like Linjos. Another method was to develop the ability to channel one's fury into the mana. It required to train the mind, allowing people like Journey Ernas to scare even powerful mages despite her natural lack of magical talent. Then, there were people like Lith that had plenty of wrath and mana of their own. Ever since he and Solus had met, it had been her task to suppress Litha's mana fluctuations until he became capable of doing it on his own. Otherwise, after he gained a green core, any animal or human in his presence would feel like a lamb in front of slaughterhouse. Uriel had lots of mana, but little aggressiveness in him. His life had been stressful but pampered. Since he was a child, everyone had treated him with care and respect. Being gifted with a calm and collected nature, anger was something that rarely affected Uriel's judgment, at least until he had been forced to spend so much time with Libya. His instructor was a battle veteran. He had no trouble teaching Uriel how to use his gifts to put an end to their constant squabbles. It may be unfair on my side to use killing intent to shut her up, but it's much better than being forced to listen to her every day. Uriel considered it justification enough to quench his guilty conscience. I don't have a single spell that doesn't come from textbooks or from my mentor. Between my duties as the heir of the Dyrus household and the academy, it's already a miracle for me to keep up with all the homework they assign to us. I can't wait to create something that I can call my own. I already have several ideas in mind. Even Professor Farr's subject piqued my interest. Community service might sound boring, but I think it will be a great experience. I never set foot out of the high-end residential areas. It's a golden opportunity to connect with the people of the kingdom and understand their needs. I can tell you what they need. Quilla was pissed off at him. They want tasty food, warm clothes, and some real justice. How do you expect to become a good ruler if you talk about commoners like they are some exotic animals you need to take care of? Do you have any idea how cold a winter can get? How many people starve every day? Quilla was usually so calm that seeing her angry was almost scary. She's right, Uriel. Floria played with the food on her plate. I think Coda practice is mostly aimed at us nobles as an eye-opener. Farg is right when she says we know nothing. I believe its purpose is to make us realize there is no easy solution to the kingdom's problems. Visiting Litha's house had been almost a shock to her. Even after all the renovations and improvements thanks to Litha's hard work, it was still worse than the servants' quarters at House Ernest. When he had shown her the nearby village, Floria had found it to be so small and dirty to make her heart tighten. After hearing Litha's stories about the farmer's harsh life, learning how even getting medical care was a luxury for them, she had felt guilty for days for having such a blessed life. Freya shared Uriel's enthusiasm, but nodded at Floria's words. She had never visited Quilla's village, yet all the stories about her previous life before she was adopted by the Ernas were enough to give Freya nightmares. After lunch, they headed towards the light magic department for their first lesson of the healer specialization. Lith was really eager to discover what kind of subject they would practice during the final year. They were already capable of healing all injuries and amputations. That left very little outside their reach. Welcome back, my dear students. Professor Vaster hadn't changed one bit. He still looked like someone had attempted to fuse together an egg and a man. The top of his head was completely bald. The hair he had left on the sides was snow white, and so were his wax handlebar mustaches. Vaster's belly was so big that it made hard to guess if he was larger than tall. It seems I was a bit too pessimistic last year, saying that only a third of you would make it to graduation, he said while twirling his mustaches. Anyway, the lesser the merrier. Now that we got rid of the dead weight, our lessons will surely go smoother. Of the 34 students that had joined the healer specialization on the 4th year, only 16 remained. Chapter 275. Just like the previous year, we're going to spend the first 2 trimesters on a single but wide subject, while during the 3rd one you'll get real practice in the field. This time as lead healers in the most important hospitals of the kingdom. What I am about to introduce to you today is the last branch of healing magic you need to master before achieving the privilege and the honor of being considered full-fledged healers. Tier 1 to 3 have taught you to mend broken bones and to heal injuries. Tier 4 how to replace lost limbs and organs. Yet there is still a case we haven't explored. What if our patient never had a limb to start with? What if they were born with a deformity or a defective organ? He asked while walking around the class. Are we helpless in front of such eventuality? The answer is no. There is nothing that a true healer cannot fix. Only death is beyond our reach, at least for now, Vaster declared with a proud look in his eyes. The first 4 tiers of magic are completely useless against natural deformities simply because there is nothing wrong in the first place. You can't heal a man born blind because it's his natural status. Even if his eyes were to be gouged and regrown, they would still be blind. Tier 4 magic simply gives the body the means to revert to its original status. Nothing more, nothing less. Tier 5 light magic brings in something that we have often mentioned but never worked on, the study of the life force. During the first trimester, I'll teach you how to sense your own life force and how to use it to manipulate other people's life force to give them a normal life." The class murmured. For all of them, life force was a vague concept. They had learned how to share it with the patients, allowing them to survive critical wounds and major procedures, but nothing more. That's only the first step, though. Once you learn how to control the life force comes the real deal. Let's suppose our patient is born with a deformed arm. It's the easiest case you'll ever face. 2-bit healers will approach the problem by amputating the arm to regenerate it in the correct shape. It works, yes. The arm will be perfectly functional, but that's a butcher execution that will teach you nothing and endangers the patient's life. A real healer uses a complex mix of light and darkness magic to perform what is called body sculpting. Mastering the life force means you can find the dissonances in its flow and correct them accordingly. Darkness magic is used to remove the excess parts or to clear the way, so that light magic can start the healing process while the mage teaches the body its new form, permanently altering its natural state. That way, if the arm gets damaged or maimed, healing magic will restore it without the need of using body sculpting. I want you to understand the deep implications of altering someone forever. Our physical appearance is something that defines us, or at least affect how others perceive us. Body sculpting is still a highly controversial ethical matter. Some worry it can be used to turn a human being into something else. That through human experimentation, it could breed all sorts of hybrids. Such concerns I can understand, but it's something for the crown to regulate, not for us mages to care about. Some radical fools say that it breaches the boundaries the gods have set for humans. I say that's bogus. When the crown passed a bill that forces those who oppose to body sculpting because it's unnatural to give up all magical tools and commodities since they are unnatural too, no one dared to say a word anymore. They are just a bunch of hypocrites. Vaster snarled. Another thing that you must know before learning body sculpting is that, like all magic, it's not omnipotent. Along with the hypocrites that would like to outlaw body sculpting, there are also the quacks that try to abuse it, exploiting the insecurities of the rich. In theory, it can be used to change the shape of a nose, to make someone taller, slimmer, or to increase bust size. Quacks demand insane sums, but the results are underwhelming, if not fatal. Seems plastic surgery still has a long way to go here. Lith was fascinated by Vaster's explanation. Body sculpting sounded a lot like the procedure he had performed on Tisti years before. Why fatal? He asked. A nose is external and relatively small. Compared to reshaping a whole arm, it should be much easier. Lith unconsciously touched his own nose, while the rest of the class wondered what they would change about their bodies if given the chance. Excellent question. Vaster scratched his short button nose, wishing he could make it more manly. Once you learn to perceive the life force, you'll notice that everything has a purpose. Our bodies have something I call a voice, for a lack of a better term, and you must learn to listen to it before applying the smallest modification. A hand wants to grab, to touch, he said while flexing the fingers of his left hand. A leg wants to walk, a nose wants to breathe, a heart to beat. What about a perfectly functional nose, albeit not easy on the eyes like mine? If you could listen to my life force, you'd find out that aside from the problems related to age, there's nothing wrong with me. It means that altering my life force, even just on the nose, would have unpredictable consequences. Make it longer could cause me problems breathing, affecting my ability to cast spells. Becoming taller is alluring, sure, but what about the ramifications? Even a few centimeters more imply that all my bones, my organs, everything must be reshaped. There's a reason why powerful mages aren't all muscular studs or world-class beauties. It's because the benefits are not worth the risks. Healthy organs have a healthy life force. Their voice can't help you. Changing them means you are acting blindly, relying more on luck and wishful thinking than on scientific basis. Vaster took a brief pause to make sure that his students had a clear understanding of his words. Internal organs are even more tricky. Like all magic above Tier 3, the procedure requires a full medical team. Unlike regenerating an organ or a limb, the process can't be performed in one go. Cutting and reshaping take a huge toll on both the healer and the patient, especially if we're working on a vital organ. It's never wise to subject them to too much stress, because if complications arise, the body may not have the strength to make it through. Even if that's not the case, it may be necessary to switch the lead healer to allow them to rest. Body sculpting is probably the hardest thing you'll ever do, and also the way you'll lose most of your patients. Vaster looked down on the ground. His mind couldn't forget all those he had failed. Each death had changed him, making him more cynical and detached. They also had made him a better healer and a better man.